Welcome to the Fullcaster Podcast, episode 30. Today our guest is Miles Calvin. He's actually from the sport karting ranks, had quite a bit of success in the Arrive and Drive game, former Super Series champion, but has also done things in 206 and even did PRD, actually, I think, with you, Derek. We're going to chat with him in just a few minutes, but first we got to get through our current events like we usually do here, and today I think we're just talking about we're the halfway point of Season 2 here, episode 30. Actually, the 11th one, this will be the 11th one we've put out because we had the Challenge of the Americas episode. Show. Yeah, that was pretty damn cool.
Almost live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to that point, I know we had talked about maybe doing one at Pro Kart, and we're not going to be able to do that because you, my friend, are not going to be around.
I'll be away from a kart track for a weekend.
Yeah, lucky you. So that's not going to happen. We're still going to try to figure out maybe we could do something here and there, but with the Supernats move, we're not going to be at Supernats together. It sounds like so.
Gosh darn it.
The racing gods are conspiring against the FCP for another live show here in Season 2, but we'll try to do some more of that moving forward. But like I said, it is a halfway point of the season. Things are really growing.
Thanks to everyone for their support.
Absolutely.
It's skyrocketed this year quite a bit.
No, it has, especially here lately with people kind of jumping in and even people messaging us like we talked about in the Dante U episode. We kind of gave a shout-out to whoever's listening in Anchorage.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's kind of what we want to say here in the current events part is a little bit of a call to action to you guys. Like, if you're listening and you really appreciate the show, we want to know what you guys race. We want to know what you guys are doing, where you're from, what karting is like in your area. Hit us up and take a picture or something like that, and we want to kind of throw a couple things back to like maybe the top 3 people or the first 3 people to hit us up.
So when will this episode come out, Mike?
Oh man, yeah, good point. What is the date today? It is May 10th that we are recording. It's going to go out May 25th.
Okay, so May 25th this will come out, and like Mike was saying, pretty much the first 3 people that tag us, and it's you in front of your go-kart.
Right.
Tag.
It'll be Memorial Day weekend that weekend too, so we're gonna get nobody hitting us up.
Everyone's gonna
nobody's
be away.
Listening.
But first 3 people will tag us in a picture of them in front of the go kart. I'll message you, get your info, and we'll send you a koozie and a sticker. So it's all just to get some engagement and really see who's listening and chat with you guys.
Again, learn a little bit more about karting, not here in SoCal. I mean, obviously we get a chance to chat with a lot of people here at CalSpeed while we're working or whoever we're racing against, that kind of stuff. And
a quick shout out to Alloy Racing. Those are the guys that shared our one of our episodes recently.
Oh, that's right.
You should be listening to this. So thanks to those guys for their support.
Yeah, and then
they're
again,
from the Great North.
Indeed, the Canadians, and and to add to that too, P1 Engines, Jesus Vasquez. I mean, he's a local, but he was like, "Hey, listen to this in the shop," and he shared it as well. We really appreciate everybody who jumps on board there and is listening and being a part of it. It's a lot of fun for us. First 3 people. That get that picture up there and tag us up, and we'll throw some merch at you.
But we're halfway through the year right now. We're still nailing down the guests for the rest of the season, but we have a list of about 20 people, and we try to have them. I mapped it out for the rest of Season 2 and Season 3, and if all goes according to plan, we have half of Season 3 covered already.
Right.
With some other round tables we're talking about trying to do and stuff.
Right.
But,
some cool stuff for next year.
But I think the rest of the season is going to be pretty badass. Starting today with our guest that we finally were able to nail down and get Miles Calvin on the show.
That's right. Now, and maybe without blabbing around too much here, it is cool to get him on finally after talking about it for over a year. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here and bring him on over. Miles Calvin. Miles Calvin, thanks for coming on board, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, now, like we kind of said in the current events, you were on the list early to try to get you on here. I've always been a big Miles Calvin fan, and you've been out here running the sport karting stuff for forever, so we get the FCP rolling last year, and so we got to get Miles on.
Yeah.
And just you couldn't get it to work out, and then finally we were able to kind of get you here on a Monday, and we appreciate you getting out here.
Yeah, no, thanks again. And you got the better brother, so you know.
Nice. And this is all a poke at Logan right now.
Yeah,
so
your
eventually
brother,
he'll get on here.
Your brother Logan Calvin, also on the must record with list for us as well. But
he's slowly falling off that list though, because he's just fighting me to get on here.
Oh, kids these days.
Yeah.
So, hey, speaking of which, here it is a Monday, and I think you had to peel away from work or take a little time to kind of do this. What is the 9 to 5 for you, and what are you taking time away from here to come record with us?
Yeah, I've been in the tile industry here for probably 7-8 years. Started off estimator, went through project manager, and then recently last year actually bought in. So,
oh wow,
yeah, we're a commercial tile contractor in Orange County. I'm part owner now, and so yeah, my 9 to 5 is pretty busy, tied up with just a bunch of tile.
Yeah,
no more karting or anything like that. So
you're an adult now.
Yeah. So, and actually, you said 9 to 5. It's probably more like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something. Like that.
Weekends included as well. Yeah. So
right.
the phone is always on, but things are good. I can't complain.
I was gonna say, it sounded like construction was actually pretty good during.
Yeah, I mean,
COVID and everything. It
was a little. We were a little hesitant. You know, last year is everything going to shut down? But we were essential. We were classified under essential, so it was actually a really good year. And then you get a little bit of government stimulus help, and it really turns into a pretty good year. So
Sure. So you guys were able to keep things rolling last year. You're talking about doing the tile thing, and we're talking commercial tiles. So we're building bigger buildings and things like that, and you guys are doing the floor for that.
Yeah, we do a lot of Irvine company work. So in Orange County, a lot of office buildings, restrooms. That's kind of probably our bread and butter. Is high-end commercial lobbies and restrooms. And no, it's been really good. We'll see where it goes, but for now, I can't complain.
How did you get involved? You said now you're part owner of this company. How did you get involved in it in the first place?
Yeah, I went to school locally. I'm actually a civil engineer. You wouldn't put that together with tile at all. But when my final year of school, I was getting married. There was a lot happening, and a family friend kind of said, "Hey, this company's looking to, hopefully hire some help. They're a little bit older in their ways. They need to, kind of freshen up a few things. And, we know your skill sets, and you can read a set of plans. I think you can grasp tile." And I said, "Hey, it's as good as anything I got out there right now. I don't have another offer. So let's give it a go." It was local. We're in Santa Ana. And it grew from there. The owner and I, we kind of hit it off, and they just have a little bit of a generation gap between dad, son, any other family or relatives. It's third generation. It's all been family, but I was able to kind of find my way in there and fit in between a few other family members. So,
and
nice.
How old are you now?
I am 32.
32.
Yeah.
So you do that in your mid 20s. You're able to get, like you said, right out of school.
Yeah, I got in, but I don't have any lane experience. I was actually a surveyor before this.
That's what I remember you doing back in the day. Yeah.
And I had a little bit of partial ownership in another company then. But then when I was getting married, I had to finish school. I had a little bit left, and we kind of parted ways, and he moved back to the Midwest. And after that,
you were open to do other things. Yeah, for sure. So that's got to, it sounds like you've got kind of that plan, or you got the career, like you said, part of the deal. Do you have an entrepreneur spark at all? I mean, you say part owner in the last one, part owner in this one, or does it kind of work out that way as far as that's probably the best way to go long term?
I think it's just part of me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back to, I've, and we'll get more in the history of my upbringing and stuff, but it was always individual sports. It was always relying on myself to get things done. Even when we were doing karting, we had a team. I was direct. I mean,
you were the guy running it.
I was 18. I put on Saikai. I mean, it was, the whole event at Dromo back in the day, and that was like the first of its kind. I always like to be that entrepreneur and be the first. And the way I always look at things is I want things to be a certain quality. And sometimes the saying is, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. You know what I mean? So I like to deliver a product that nobody else can compete with, and it just kind of leads me into leadership, ownership, and it's what I enjoy. So yeah.
Well, and actually, going to your point about the Dromo stuff, I actually remember reading about it because I wasn't down here. But you put on, I think, what you were just saying there in
SciCai. Yeah. So that stood for Southern California Indoor Karting Invitational.
And that was, I remember, like, you even had a shirt. Was it Infinity Designs or
Infinity Designs?
Eternity,
so that was
or whatever.
Eternity. You're right. It's been a few years. So it's Eternity Designs. That was another entrepreneurial thing that we kind of took off and had going for a few years through the end of high school into college. It was something we wanted to give a go, and kind of tied the two together with racing and stuff. So yeah,
always been doing stuff kind of like you said between the karting team, which we'll get into whatnot. But you've always been kind of that leader that kind of wanted to be at the sharp end of whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to create great things. If it's a rivalry or if it's a company, or I always wanted to be at the top notch, and there's no other person better than myself to lead it. So
having that kind of mentality can definitely get you rolling in life for sure. Speaking of which, though, why don't we roll it on back to the very beginning? I know that you did a lot of the arrive and drive stuff, and that's how I met you, was indoor karting originally. But how did you get into racing? Is your family a racing family? Are you guys fans or whatever? Or what's Little Miles doing? How does he get into it?
Yeah, I think it stems back to my dad. They always rode trail bikes and stuff like that. But the biggest influence, I would say, would be my dad would go to Costa Mesa Speedway every Friday night back in the 70s, 80s. And so then when we were born, he got into BMX. So he lived in Orange Y. BMX is right there off 55 and Chapman. So he got into that. He started racing. I was born. Almost before I could walk, I was on a bike. And I was riding a bike racing at 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were all over.
Have races for 3-year-olds?
Yeah, I think it was 5 and under with this class.
Wow.
Yeah, at my first race, I was actually getting kind of pushed around the track. There would be like a broomstick with a tennis ball. And,
really?
On the large jumps where you just can't muster up enough, they'd come in and assist you and push right under the seat post, and actually
get you over the hill.
Way.
Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
3, I was going, and we were in the...
What year is that roughly? I'm trying to remember.
Okay, so I was born in 88, so that was early 90s.
Okay, early 90s, gotcha.
Yeah. And so as I got older, 5, 6, we started chasing points, local scene. We were probably racing 5 nights a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
And it was local, that BMX place.
Yeah, so Orange, there was Coal Canyon, Whittier Narrows. There's actually 2, what would I say? There's MBL and ABA, so there's 2 sanctions.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so then that doubles your amount of tracks that you can ride and stuff, and they just don't. They're competition, so the points don't intermix. But
right.
So it doubles your nights or whatever you got to do to try to compete.
Plenty of racing you can do out there then.
Yeah, so did that for my entire childhood. Every night of the week we were on the road.
BMX.
Yes, BMX. Never got into the national scene, but state championships and stuff like that we were always at. And
you were racing, but did you do any of the tricks or any of that other side of the culture?
No, I've never been more. It's always been a competition has to have a start and a finish. You know what I mean? I'm not about a judging. You know what I mean? I don't want any bias. It's got to be concrete. It's a time or something. So my dad raced as well. So there was cruiser class, and he raced. And,
so you're racing. He's racing. Is your brother Logan running?
So
and I
by
can't
that
remember
time,
how old you guys.
So we're 5 years apart.
Okay, gotcha.
So by the time Logan came around, I would probably be 100% honest. The BMX probably was a big contribution to my parents getting divorced. It was just it was me and my dad racing every night of the week.
Gotcha.
Mom was at home. Little brother came along, and it was just like, hey, you know what? This isn't going to work any longer. Mm-hmm. My dad is he's a racer at heart. He likes to go.
Right.
And it was probably one of the contributions. I wouldn't say the only, but that they broke up when I was 6.
Okay.
So Logan was 1.
Right.
And so Logan never really got to experience that side of things. And that kind of goes into, I'm sure later, but yeah, he was always on my tail. You know, I wanted to be able to provide some sort of a racing life for him.
Well, and we'll get into it later because I met you guys much later, but it definitely always seemed like now you guys are very much equal. You're brothers, right? And it's kind of like how I see my brother. They went from being a older brother to younger brother to now you're just brothers.
Yeah, I think it happens as you get older too, doesn't
No,
it?
it definitely as you get up there in age. But back to what I was saying, it always seemed like you were a mentor to him. You know,
it was that way a lot, you know, till he started ending up on the top step, and I was looking up at him.
Yeah.
You know, it was a little bit of a change. But I'm sure we'll get into more of that, and you know, as we go on through my timeline. But
you were BMXing past 6.
Yeah, I went to about 9.
Gotcha.
And if I recall, I think I got a motorcycle for my 10th birthday.
Okay, so
and it was all over.
The single digits, you're doing non-powered.
Yeah, all leg work.
And it's you and your dad still running the entire time all the way up until 9?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're still racing, you know, maybe not during the week as much, but at least on Friday, Saturday, Sundays we were out racing.
And Logan didn't get any of that love like when he turns 3, 4, 5 in there?
No, I think even as that time came on, there was even more and more. My dad would move further away, so there was a little bit less of that going on.
But you and your pops are still going BMXing, so it's you two guys you're running. But then, as you say, 10th birthday, you get a bike.
And I asked myself, why didn't I get this thing sooner? You know,
why do the pedaling when you could just hit the throttle, baby?
What kind of success did you have in the BMX stuff?
Not a ton, I wouldn't say. I was always super competitive. There's like 3 levels to BMX. There's, you know, beginner, intermediate, and expert. And once you get up to expert, a lot of those guys are riding every night of the week.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at least 4 or 5 times. And so I was always a multi-sport athlete as well. Like, it wasn't just BMX for me. It was either soccer, because I did so much BMX when I was younger. When I got that chance to maybe do a few team sports once my parents got divorced, I wanted to see what that realm was about too. So I was playing soccer, and so some of my weekends were getting taken up and stuff like that.
You're splitting the disciplines up a little bit.
But once I got the motorcycle, it was a game changer. Yeah. So
when you realized too, you probably realized you're like, screw the team shit. Like, it doesn't.
It was. I mean, I still did it throughout high school, but there was definitely a different focus on the motorcycle stuff. But also, when you get the motorcycles, I mean, there wasn't nearly as many tracks around at that time, and it was more of a weekend activity. So there would be a lot of weekends, and that was my dad's time that we'd be spending at the track.
Meanwhile, during the week, or as you say with school, you're still hitting those games up and whatnot that usually happen during the week. So you're able to do a little bit of both. When you go and you do the motorcycle stuff. Aside from it just having an engine, what was the big draw to you on those? Because I know you're not getting a stupid amount of air with the bike. Was it jumps? Was it speed? What was it? Yeah, so actually for BMX, we were jumping pretty good stuff for how little I was. I mean, the doubles, I'd say we're getting probably 30 feet. Wow. Yeah, 20 to 30 feet gaps.
At that point, you don't have that guy pushing you
from
behind anymore.
No. It's commitment. Yeah, so
no tennis balls now.
Yeah.
and I would never say that jumping was like my strong suit. I would always say cornering or just being on the ground. So once I got my first motorcycle, my dad, being from the Speedway, looked it up and talked to some people at the track and said, hell yeah, there's a practice track in Corona called Melee's.
Okay, real quick. You said your dad being from Speedway.
Well, so like he went back in the 70s and 80s, right? So that was his upbringing on Friday nights, just watching, not racing, just watching.
So he knew about it, but
did.
not,
he was never behind the scenes. He was always in the crowd. And so once I came around and we had my motorcycle, after the races, you're always able to go into the pits, right? So then he would start asking questions and, hey, is there any tracks locally? My son just got a motorcycle. I want to get him out there. And my dad was never a big proponent of jumping either. Just so many injuries that we would see happen.
So, but the bike you got was a dirt bike, right? To go to, trails or motocross or what have you, but you go to Speedway races to check them out.
Yeah, and we would still go on, it had now been Saturday night. And so we would still go, and I loved watching Speedway, and it was part of my childhood as well. But yes, the motorcycle was a PW80, 2-stroke little, 3-gear automatic. And so we transformed this bike and made it almost a Speedway bike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he just loved the sense of Speedway. He loved everything about it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was 10. I didn't know anything. Hey, let's go do it. Let's go race.
I got a motorcycle, yeah.
So, and we always had a track. He lived in Pomona on like a quarter to half acre. So he'd always have a little track in our backyard that we would ride to. So most weekends, if we weren't at Maley's or wherever else, we were riding at home, which was first a BMX track, then turned into a little motorcycle track.
Gotcha. Oval?
No, that was it was built all the way around the house.
Okay.
With a jump and everything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you got pretty comfy on the motorcycle pretty quick, but then you guys kind of Frankenstein this thing a little bit into more of the Speedway bike, and then you go out and try that.
Yeah, take the knobbies off, put more of a flat track tire on it, and then we met a bunch of people at this place called Maley's in Corona, which is right next to the Kawasaki practice track off the 91.
Oh, okay.
Off the 15. And so Maley owned 30, 40 acres worth of land before Corona really boomed and populated. So we were there every weekend, and so the locals who race Speedway would go there to practice. And so we made a bunch of more connections there, and then got into talks with Oxley, which is Brad Oxley, who owns Costa Mesa Speedway, and we were asking about their junior program because my dad started buying a junior bike, and we were just going down this realm, but there was no junior program locally. The only other program local was up in Auburn, California, which is near Sacramento.
And how old do you typically have to be to get on the Speedway bike?
So the adult age is 16 that they like to see, and so
not dissimilar from karts, pretty close to right that same age. Okay.
But there used to be a junior rank where all these kids would develop. I think in the 90s or late 80s there was a crash with a under 16 with a minor, that there was a lawsuit and everything, and it just wasn't worth the risk
trying to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
So the junior program kind of evaporated in Southern California at that time. Up north in Sacramento, it was still going, but that's a 7-hour drive just to go race on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So we got into talks, and I was actually one of the first two that got the junior program going back at Costa Mesa Speedway.
When you're just barely into double digits yourself,
yeah, I think
right?
I started racing Speedway because my number at that time was 99, so it was 1999, so I was 11.
11.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and so it was just 2, and then we got it to 3 and 5, and then they took that junior program into probably 15 to 20 kids.
Wow. And the Speedway stuff that I've seen, I think it's like World Cup stuff, so we're talking like 4 guys on track at a time, right? Is that Speedway across the board, or do they end up having more on track?
4 is pretty much the max.
Okay.
They do have long track stuff in England where they'll go 6, but the tracks are much, much bigger.
Right.
And here in the States, the tracks are actually much smaller than just a normal European track. So I think Costa Mesa is about a 16th of a mile.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's tiny.
Where a lot of European tracks are probably 1/8 to quarter mile.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still only putting 4 on there. So but if you have 4 kids, you've already got a full class technically. So how does it? Do they go heat race, qualifying, stuff like that? How does that go with the flat track stuff?
So it's similar to karting. They would have different engine sizes. They would go 150cc and under, and then there's like a 200cc and under, and then they have the last class, which is 250 Jawa motors that actually crank out quite a bit of horsepower with a heavy flywheel, all 4 strokes. And so you kind of work up your ranks accordingly. And so by the time you're probably 14, 15, 16, you should be on the biggest junior bike, which would be like a Jawa 250.
And how fast are we going here on those things?
The speed is probably it feels like you're going 80 to 100. You know what I mean? But you're really realistically probably going somewhere between 30 or 40 in the junior ranks. But there's no brakes.
Right.
You
That's
know,
what I found out.
So the bikes are super lightweight. There's a ton of horsepower with a heavy flywheel. So the thing about Speedway is the saying is when you want to slow down, you actually try to speed up. So you actually put more throttle into it. So you let that rear wheel spin, because as soon as you let off, that actually grabs.
Starts to grip up, yeah.
And then you actually go to where you don't want to go.
Aha.
Yeah, so I mean, It was a great time. We did a lot of racing locally, and then once I got into like the 15, 16 range, my dad was actually moving to Houston, and it was getting a little tougher to race. But once I was 15, 16, he was up in Auburn, and I'd fly up there in the summer and stay up there.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and we'd race every Friday night up there. And I think my best finish was third at the Nationals.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is in the junior ranks still?
Junior ranks, yeah. Once I got into the 16 plus, my dad had moved to Houston, and it was just too expensive.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was you needed better equipment to compete, and I was a very smart rider. I wasn't a huge risk taker, so I could put myself in good situations, but I was never going to be the fastest. It just wasn't in me. You know what I mean? So
was there an end plan to it? Was it just it was something you and your dad did, and it was just for fun, or were you guys trying to move up the ranks and see where it would take you?
So Europe Speedway's huge. Here in America, it's not very big, and maybe you get one rider to go overseas every 3 to 4 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so there was never a career path really. The guy that actually won the Nationals when I was racing went to Europe, and he raced over there. He's still over there racing.
Oh wow!
Ricky Wells, but it's few and far between. Back in the 80s, it was more of a global sport. There was a lot of Americans racing.
Yeah.
Bruce Penhall was a champion.
I know that name.
Yeah. So there was a lot more notoriety and a lot more following. It's still huge in Europe, Poland, Sweden. It's huge. But it's just never really taken off here in the States any more than it was in the 80s.
So your dad ends up going to Houston. That kind of puts a kibosh on the old Speedway game. What fills the gap?
Well, that's how the whole karting world became a subject. So I was 16. I got a license. Dad's out of town. I mean, I've been racing since I was 3, and so the Speedway thing isn't much of an option any longer. So because we were in Speedway, Dromo had Monday night ovals.
Oh, okay.
So every once in a while, or on a Saturday night, if there was no racing going on, we would go to Dromo, grab dinner, do a few races, and do pretty well. I was always at the sharper end of a public race. And then the oval stuff came very natural because that's Speedway. It's just a left, it's just one big circle.
Yeah.
So we started going on Monday nights, and I was at that time probably, about 16, 17. Logan was 11. So a little run. But I entered after a few weeks of going. I saw that there was an oval series. And I'm like, I got this oval stuff down.
I actually had no idea there's an oval series there.
Yeah.
First time hearing about that. Okay.
And so, I signed up, and I think first time out, and so Dromo had already been going. There was already like a crowd at Dromo that hung out, and that would probably consist of like Diego Morales and Todd Lewis and Jay Schreiber was during that time. And
what year is this roughly that you're?
So so we'll say 04.
04? Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to help me out with the timeline.
Yeah, because there's some worlds in 05, right? In
That's
Phoenix,
when
I
it
think.
starts. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm only like 04, 05 probably in Dromo, and just ovals.
Yeah.
How did that first night go? First oval race?
I think I placed top 3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I came in, and I had a motorcycle helmet, goggles, none of the traditional karting stuff at all.
Were you getting the dirty looks from the other guys?
They were looking at us.
This guy, it's not that kind of oval, bro.
Yeah. And actually, my brother was pretty good. But I'm like, Logan, I can't put you in these ranks yet. Let me go test the waters and see how good these guys are.
What a good big brother.
Yeah. Let me go test the waters. And I come out top 3, and I know he can hang. So I think the second round, we signed him up as well. And they're like, who's this little pipsqueak? You know what I mean? Racing us. But he was probably just always a 10th or 2 behind me. So it was never like he was at the top end of the stick, or of the chart. But I can't recall exactly. I think there was a championship one. I think Bill Myers may have gotten it over me.
Yeah. Bill Myers used to tout that he was the oval champion.
Me and him went back and forth. I think Hubcap would come out for the ovals, and he was a force to reckon with because you just couldn't get around him. And he would hold his own. But no, we had a lot, and I met Diego there and the Kimbrells, and it was a great time. And then they introduced me into more of the GP series.
Right. So you're predominantly just going in circles, doing the oval stuff, and then Saturday night or whatever you guys would go, and that's not oval. That's a regular course. So you meet these guys. You're at the sharp end. Did you ever have that desire to you did do to the ovals? Did you have a desire to turn both directions and do the other stuff? Really?
Yeah, I mean, BMX was both directions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think it just kind of went back to my roots, and Dromo was pretty slick. You know what I mean? So I think I had a little bit of an advantage there as well, just understanding grip and how to maneuver a corner with a little bit of a slide. So that was kind of a natural thing for us. And it just, I think what actually kicked us off was, I don't know what year it was, but the first 12-hour at Dromo.
2008.
So we're probably talking 06, 07, if we had to probably get exactly. And so come 08, they throw this promotion out that, hey, we're going to have time trials, and the winner of the time trials is going to be able to guest on our celebrity team.
Oh, for the 12-hour.
For the 12-hour.
So they're doing that in 7, because in 2000 it was January 2008 they had the 12-hour.
Okay.
It was actually the same weekend as the Super Bowl. So it might have been early February.
Yeah, it's a while back. I don't have that good of a memory.
Yeah.
But so it was like Wednesday night shootouts, and they were doing it for like a month, and whoever ended up at the top of the charts, and at that time I don't even think weight was even, there was no weight. So
right.
I was a little lighter. I probably had a little bit of an advantage, but I remember Jeremy Queener was up there, we kept on going back and forth. Like there was either 2 or 3 nights a week that they would host these time trials, and so we just kept on going back and forth up on top of the charts.
What are you doing for work at this point? Because you're 16, and you're
just doing school?
Well, because I was gonna say you're going to this indoor center and you're paying. I'm assuming you're paying, or is it the mom paying?
No, I mean, since I was 16, I kind of paid for everything that we were doing. So yeah, not only would I be probably paying for myself, but at that point, I was paying for Logan as well.
Gotcha.
My mom was just barely making ends meet, so going to the kart track was probably not going to be an option.
Yeah. So what are you doing to get the old income?
So I was working at a golf course. I've played golf.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was working at a golf course, and tips at a golf course aren't bad for 16. And then I think when I turned 18, I started doing bail bonds and making some side income there through high school or through college. And I met some other friends through golf, but along with my racing, I've always played golf. I played 2 years in college, so that was kind of my cross sports. And so I worked at the golf course and then went to bail bonds after that and made some side income.
Gotcha. But you're able to pay for the racing via the tips and stuff like that, and you start doing the GP deal. Well, I should go back. You start doing these time trials, and it's like this carrot, like it's that competition of I want to be top, and the carrot is being on this a celebrity team, you said.
Right, and little did I know, I didn't know that much about karting, but of course the Friday night before the event, I believe it was, everybody came in. The track got hot, and I think Queener ended up getting that spot. But through that whole time, Bill Myers, Jay Schreiber were watching me go back and forth, and they're like, hey, we don't know that much about you or anything, but we'd like to offer you a spot on our team if you want to race with us. And I'm like, sure, that'd be awesome. So yeah, I showed up in my motocross gear, and I actually went all out. I actually brought the full get up from top to bottom. I brought the uniform out, all these guys are in their fancy suits, so why not match them? And no, we had a great time, and I think we placed probably top 3. I can't recall exactly, but we gave it a good run, and that's how all the relationships kind of started. Started racing the GPs pretty consistently, put our own 12-hour teams together after that with Diego and the Kimbrells, and then Logan started maturing, and he was racing with us, and then they introduced us to Phoenix,
That's in 2008, and the Phoenix thing had been going for... Had you gone to Phoenix yet at that point, or you guys didn't go until 2009?
I believe 2009.
Or excuse me, it would have been 2008 that you guys would have gone for the first time, perhaps, because this race happened the beginning of 2008.
Yeah, it may have been 2008, 2009, and I think 2010 may have been Worlds.
Well, so World Championship happened 5, 6, 7. It left for Belgium in 8, went to Brazil in 9, and then came back here, I believe, in 10.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we did 2 years of United States, and then we went to the Worlds in the summer of 10.
Gotcha. All right. Now I got the timeline in my head, and the reason why I asked all that kind of stuff, because obviously that was the heyday of arrive and drive karting. Sport karting across the United States was huge. There was big championships all over the place. There was big endurance races all over the place. There was I was running leagues, running meaning putting them on at Kart. We all were, but Kart was the deal in the Northwest. We had our own team. Dromo was this hotbed of drivers as well, and that's where you guys are running all the time. So in 2005,
and then we had VLK as well on the East Coast.
Yes, VLK, Lehigh Valley.
Then you had your Arizona-based group.
You had the Arizona guys at F1 Race Factory. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all over the place, and it was really fun because then you also had, and I want to say 2000. Might have been 8, or 7, somewhere in there, was when EKN spawned IKN, Indoor Karting News. And point being is that you would go on the internet, and just like you would read about competition karting, indoor karting was at the same kind of coverage, and we would be talking about things. You'd be able to go into these big events. Like you've got Pro Tour for competition karting right now. You'd have the United States Indoor Karting Championship, I guess our Supernats, if you will.
And this is all pre-K1 too. I don't think K1 really probably hit the market till maybe 09, 10. And so these are all gas-powered indoor.
Everything's good. Yeah, there's a little bit of electric here and there. Like Extreme was, I believe Extreme was electric over. No, wait a minute, my guess. Point being, there was a little bit splattered here and there. You start doing the GPs after this event. You start doing the GPs and stuff like that. How do you? Obviously, you're able to go quick. I know that weight started coming to play after that Dromo race.
After Mike Kai started winning all these Super Series events, or not the
GPs,
the GPs,
yeah, they started
at
adjusting
140 or whatever. Yeah, they started adjusting. Yeah.
So you've basically found a home here in the indoor ranks after not after the Speedway stuff stops, and you find a home karting. When you jump into the GPs, does it come pretty quick, the racing? Or was that really the speed's there on a one-off lap? Was the racing right there as well?
Yeah, I would always say that racing was always my strong suit. I would never say that speed was probably it. It was always racing. I think my racecraft definitely got me through the ranks. If it was BMX or Speedway, like I said, I was never the fastest Speedway guy, but I always put myself in the right spot.
Right. Smart rider, you said.
Right.
Yeah.
And so going into karting, yeah, the racing, I think I had a leg up on a few of these guys. And, I mean, of course, newbie comes in, rubbing's a little bit of racing. Yeah. I turn a few heads, and they're looking at, who's this new guy, and before there was other rules and weights, I was a little lighter probably, and so, yeah, we worked our way right up to the top of the ranks. I can't recall. This is probably my worst part is I don't have a very good memory as far as even when I was looking up some things for this, what year I won the Super Series championship. It just doesn't stick. But I don't think there was any championships won in the GP series. I know the ovals, we were super close.
And the field is pretty deep on the GPs, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you go back to the A mains of the GPs, and you're probably talking, 10 out of the top 20 at USIKC, I'd say.
Wow.
You look at John Kimbrell, Aaron Downs, Diego Morales,
Mike
Kai, myself, my brother. I'll feel bad if I forgot anybody big, but there was definitely a lot of names coming out of Dromo that would be able to compete. John being the biggest because of all his success as well.
As you're kind of cutting your teeth and stuff like that, and it's all been Dromo. Yeah, okay, there's the 12-hour that happens in 08, and then you guys go to Phoenix in 08. This is the first time you've left Dromo, if you will, for a big event, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you go into that first event, I feel like you're doing pretty good locally. Like, okay, yeah, I got this kind of thing figured out. It's a slick track, that kind of stuff. For those that are not already into the indoor game from back in the day, Phoenix is not. Phoenix was more of a variable grip. Some places were a bit more grippy. Some places were slicker, and it's big. It was like 100,000 square foot facility, Dromo's not even close to that. It's a lot smaller, kind of like Sidekart was. And they had 2 tracks, and they put them together for like this bigger track. They called it half mile. It probably wasn't that long, but it was a much bigger deal. Never mind, there's talent coming from all over the country. When you guys go into that, knowing you now, I know that you're fairly confident in your own ability, etc., like that, and for good reason. But going into that, did you have that same kind of mentality, like we should be able to roll right out of the gate?
Yeah, I think luckily if I put some timelines together, I think 09 may have been our first one.
Maybe it was 9?
Yeah, because there was definitely some guidelines to follow with the Kimbrels, and they're like, you definitely want to get there a few days in advance,
okay,
and get some laps. And so you go out, and I believe that first year we may have had our Bumblebee gear, our yellow and black.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And so you go out and you're turning some laps, and you're comparing times. But
right.
we went into it very ultra confident, and I think the biggest event that we went in was probably 10 Worlds, where I didn't know anybody. And since I already had some success in 09, I'm like, I can compete with anybody.
Right.
And that I was able to place top 5.
Right.
And I think a part of my success was not getting hung up on names. You know what I mean? I didn't know anybody at the 2010 Worlds.
That was what was interesting for me, is it was actually the other way around, is that in 2008 was actually the very first USIKC, United States Indoor Karting Championship. It was the first one. They had been doing the World Championship there. It started there. That was its origin. It started in 05. And I went in 06, 07, and then, the other stuff. But in 06 and 07 and 05, they just had the highest ranking American. Like the American champion was basically whoever finished highest is the American, right?
Right.
So it wasn't, I'm sorry, the first one was 2007. Was the first USIKC.
Well, and the Brazilians just dominate. I mean, from right back in the 05, 06.
Well, I mean, Werner Trugler was the first one, and he was from Austria.
Right.
And then Alex Gumpenberger got it in 6, also from Austria.
But at that stage, we're not even close. We're not even in the ranks, right? 05, 06?
In 05, the locals were all right. I want to say Truman Godfrey was right in there. Tony Rolfson in 07 was pretty damn close. And in 07, I said that 08 was the first one. It's not. They actually had a spring one in 07 where they did the USIKC. And I know my team was like, well, we're already going to be there in the fall with everybody else. Whereas you were talking about how you had some success, but you went to the Worlds and you didn't know anybody. I started at the Worlds not knowing anybody and already was getting my ass kicked right out of the gate. So it was a little bit kind of the other way around, where kind of eyes open and like, oh, let's see how we can do, not knowing anybody. And, I think you're right. I think it was probably 09 that you guys came out first because, I remember the yellow and the black suits. And I remember kind of being, who the hell is this Miles Calvin guy? I already knew John Kimbrell was up there, Aaron Downs is up there, whatnot. And you were right in that group, right on the kind of the back end of those guys, having done pretty good in 2009. And your brother was there, Logan, and he sucked. He was not good. He was not good at all. But he was learning. He was a kid too.
Yeah,
he wasn't as old.
Probably 13, 14,
just
somewhere in there. Yeah,
picking it up. But I knew about John from Dromo and whatnot. And John ended up becoming one of my biggest indoor rivals. When you went into that, did you guys pay attention to indoor karting news and whatnot? As you go to these different events, not really caring about who they are and like that, but did you start measuring against, you got John and whatnot, or did you pay attention to anybody from anywhere else?
Oh yeah, I was out there scouting. Yeah, and one of the biggest ones was you. You know what I mean? You had the whole Sidekart game with Adam, and I mean I think Scott Gardy was back then, and so we were watching and comparing notes, and I believe, who won 08?
I did.
Okay, so when I showed up 09, it was definitely watch out for the Mike Smith guy.
And then we had Smith Racing Development was the team. Yeah.
Right. So of course those practice days I was taking a lot of notes, and there was things that you were doing a hell of a lot better than I was doing. You know what I mean? Just as far as consistency. I think that was the big game changer in indoors, just learning how to do it time after time after time, because that 1/10 of a second, you give it away, you ain't getting it back. Right. You know what I mean? So the first year I showed up, I was kind of the co-fiddle of John. We ended up in a lot of heats together.
And this is for Worlds? Or?
No, this is USIKC.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so I show up, and John and I'm in a lot of his heats, and we end up 1-2, and pit. There's one pit, per, and so we were strategizing on who goes in first and make sure that and so that was just a learning year for me.
Yeah.
I want to say 10. There wasn't a ton of Americans that showed up at the Worlds.
Yeah, in 10 there was no more SRD team, and I wasn't there at all, even for the USIKC as well. And I think it just kind of, and that was because I had moved. I wasn't at Cycart anymore, and I wasn't, or even the next place I was working at. But without that influx from the Northwest, also elsewhere in the United States, sport karting was kind of taking a downturn in 2010 a little bit. And I think that's also what contributed to there not being as many Americans at all. But still, at the sharp end of all the Americans that were there, and overall, was you.
Yeah. I think me and John, and then Logan, I think, was competing for Junior Worlds.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah,
They started
that. Yeah, we had but also I think the nice thing about the United States Championship was a lot of the other events, because there was, like you said, there was a lot of conversation, and there was rumblings on the internet as far as all these different facilities and their best. There was a lot of team racing, so there was a lot of endurance racing.
Right.
But I believe this was one of the only times that we ever got together and were able to compete mano-a-mano.
Exactly.
So it was measuring, okay, your best versus our best, and let's give it. And I think there was 2 or 3 years that you and John, it was coming down to the final. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. It did in both in 8 and in 9. John was in the conversation in 8, and then actually in 2009, one of my favorite years, he wins, and it's Truman Godfrey and I tied, I think, for second, and we're like a point and a half behind, and I lose on a tiebreaker or something like that. But John was the guy from Dromo. If I was the guy up north, he was the guy at Dromo, and then you'd have, Pemberton was the guy, if you will, at VLK
or
and
Fred,
or Fred,
yeah.
And it was so fun to have that same, like you say, that kind of mano-a-mano deal. Even though we'd race each other at the Dromo race, or we'd race each other at 24 Hours of VLK or whatever it is, and then be able to meet in there and kind of have our own super naps. It's pretty damn cool to even have to think of it now in arrive and drive karting that like nothing.
I know.
There was so many events during that period of time. All like,
and it still had another level to go. Like there was still no association that got all these facilities together. I mean, there was still another level it could have gone. But I think that the electric craze came in with K1 and all of its. And kind of broke up a lot of what was going on.
And then in hindsight, I don't know if the market boom in 2008 or whatever, or I should say bust. The envelope kind of going down the other way, and maybe discretionary income starting to go by the wayside. I kind of feel like maybe that's how people started doing indoor karting, because they couldn't afford outdoor karting and maybe other stuff.
Yeah, maybe, huh?
They wanted to go racing, but they could afford indoor stuff. Maybe that's why it kind of boomed there for a couple of years, and then things got better, and they're like, well, I can go back to what I like to do originally.
Yeah, I mean, I still there's still a bit of me that would love to put on the same kind of thing nationally with 8 to 10 events, because it's so easy and accommodating. All you need is your helmet and a gear bag.
Yeah.
Some shoes, and you can get, and the nice thing about indoor that we haven't really even touched on is that it comes down to skill. You take the setup out of it. You do have a little bit of luck. Don't get me wrong, with your kart draws, but it comes down to you at the end of the day and the driver. And so we'd show up at these events with your helmet, and it was let the best man win, because it wasn't about your equipment. You know what I mean? So that's what I loved about it. Is I loved the racing. I didn't love the wrenching. I didn't love the all the tuning.
Yeah.
I didn't have, but I could go out and I could drive a go-kart and I could compete, you know what I mean? And so that's what we loved. We did that, and then, progressing from there, we got to go to Belgium, and did the Worlds after 2010. I think that was maybe 2011.
Yeah.
We got to go to Belgium.
Yeah, was that Jopen?
That was Eupen, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was a great experience. Met some great guys over there.
That's so crazy how much stuff you got to do from indoor karting.
Well, and actually in 2011, that was actually out here, because in the in halfway through 2010, Dromo had closed,
Right.
And the Super Series started.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you could take the Dromo family and just
plug them
right into CalSpeed.
Yeah.
Had you gone to CalSpeed at all prior to that point?
No. Brad moving. So I don't know when Brad started here.
He left in 2009.
Okay, so Brad moved, and he said, guys, just, I've got something in the works. It's not going yet, but just stay in touch, And I think he had an idea internally that K1 was trying to get Dromo, and there was a lease up, and there was a bunch of things turning over at Dromo 1 that we didn't know what was going to happen. So we kept in touch with Brad, and then as soon as that, I think he let it do its due diligence, and it did fizzle out. And he said, "Hey guys, I'm ready to go."
Yeah. As soon as that kind of went to an end, Brad Packard's like, "We got something for you right here."
It seemed kind of seamless too, from the time that racing stopped at Dromo to racing started here. You do the races.
It was like
didn't
a
really
test
miss
season,
a beat.
I believe. I think it was only like a 4 to 6 race season.
It was. I don't know if it was a test season per se, but I think Brad didn't force the competition. He waited for the Dromo thing to finish, and as soon as it was done, I say him and Rob, and they were all doing it together. But and then it wasn't until like June or July or something like that of 10, about halfway through the year, and they did like a little 5-race deal, which actually finished in January of 2011 because one of the races got rained out, so it had to be pushed over. But yeah, it was just a short season, and you hadn't been out here at all until Dromo closes. You still want to go racing?
Yeah, I mean, we had talks because John did some stuff, and
some of the enduros and stuff.
Was doing outdoor stuff and the Rotax, and so they were familiar with the facility. But at that time, it was just outdoors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You guys had your corporate events, I believe, at that time for the Arrive and Drive. That's why you guys had the carts.
Yeah,
from my understanding.
Yeah, they did corporate events. They they even done stuff at like Long Beach and crap like
Definitely
that.
wasn't a public track to the extent it is now, right?
I mean, they didn't even have the sport carts like the Sodis. It was the
Stratus
Stratuses for the first few years. I can't remember how they ended up getting the first fleet from was it Miramar or something like that. But did you?
Well, Stratus was parallel with Dromo, right?
No, yeah. Well, yeah, except for not from there. These are from
up north.
No, I think a European fleet or whatever.
Okay.
It was like one of the last European Stratus fleets. Anyway, but they used them at the Machismo, which had been going for. It got fired up again in 2008. Did you guys not do Machismo in Vegas either?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was.
Had you heard about it or anything like that?
Oh, you couldn't help but hear about it on ICANN.
Yeah, so I also think during my time frame at that 08 juncture, because things were slowing down a little bit at Dromo, and I ended up going and starting racing motocross. For a little bit.
All right.
And I think it was getting a little expensive, and I can go buy a bike, I can go out for $25-$30 on the weekend and have fun, and so at that time I was like, hey, I got that one final gear in me to go give motorcycle a shot, and so it was at that time I'm like, I'm gonna try. And so I think we didn't do 2008 Machismo. There was probably a year and a half to where we did some of the events, but not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then that didn't work out. I just didn't have it in me. So we ended up back, I think, and that's when this place kind of took off, and we just took it by the we loved it out here. You know what I mean?
You guys walking out to the track just makes me think of all the baseball players walking out in Field of Dreams. Like they have a place to go play.
Yeah. Yeah. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
I don't think that thinking back on it, I don't remember seeing your name a bunch in the 2010 half season as much. 2011 you were definitely here. But so you're doing the motocross thing, and you said you didn't have it in you. Out of curiosity, why did you go motocross instead of the Speedway thing? Is it simply because there wasn't as much Speedway stuff going on, and also, to your point, you could also use the bike to go screw around on the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think accessibility for Speedway was tough to go practice and get your game to the top level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also part of me knew that it was never going to go to that.
Okay.
I just knew inside of me that the skill sets I had versus Ricky Wells, who I've seen go to the top, I wasn't going to compete. You know what I mean? But going to Anaheim 1 Supercross, And watching these guys, I'm like, I can do this.
I could jump.
Yeah, I mean, I used to race BMX. I can do this, you know. And so I wanted to give it a go. And yeah, you're jumping a lot further, a lot higher, and going a lot faster, and a lot of the same things. I don't have that X factor just to let it go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
You said that earlier with the Speedway stuff. Mm-hmm. So you weren't the big risk taker or whatnot at that point.
Well, it's the same thing even too. Like on another example, Rob talked about this when trying to make it as a race car driver. He's like, I don't want to do the sacrifice of living in my van for a year to go pay for a ride. You know, it's like I don't want to risk my body to go try to make it as a motocross racer. You know.
Yeah, I never had any ambition, even in the karting side, so much to go to the next level. I mean, I think we went to Long Beach one year, and Craig Stanton was another Dromo guy at that time. And I went out to Long Beach and realized that half of the guys racing that I thought were professionally paid were paying for their ride. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right, right.
Yeah. But the sport karting side, I think what I loved about that, so that we had the 10 introductory season, I think you said, 11 it finally kicked off. Mm-hmm. The racing was unparalleled. Yeah. You know, we've established that we come outdoors and there's a draft.
Yeah.
No one ever even knew that was going to be in existence. You know what I mean? So
I remember that was the first big thing I felt too. And the D main in my first Super Series, I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting like a toe right now.
Yeah.
You would go indoor, right? And if you're pulling away from the other guys, either because you got out of the corner better or your kart was better. I mean, honestly.
Right.
There's no draft.
Yeah, so you come out here and there's just another element.
Yeah.
And you know, sure, it wasn't as technical, but the racing was probably 5 times better.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And you're getting 25 guys on a track at a time. And, I mean, coming from the motorcycle stuff and motocross, lining up on the gate, having 25 guys go at it, it was
badass.
More appealing to me. Like, I was never a Formula One guy. I was never to follow the leader stuff or the lap time or the speed. Like I said, it was always about more racing for me.
I was going to ask, as a spectator or as a fan, what did you watch growing up? Was it a lot of the two-wheel stuff you were paying attention to?
So I always followed the Supercross side of things. Mm-hmm. But also, being from Speedway, I love dirt track, so a lot of sprint car stuff. You know.
So to your point, it wasn't a lot of the mainstream stuff you were paying attention to.
Maybe a little bit of NASCAR. You know, you watch some Daytonas, and you know, of course, the Indy 500s would come on.
The big races,
But I never followed F1 to any level.
Yeah.
I knew Schumacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That was about it.
But even IndyCar coming to town here, like.
Yeah, no, I mean, Long Beach, when I got a little bit older and the Dromo crowd brought me out to Long Beach. But yeah, not much car racing other than going out to Paris Auto Speedway to watch.
Again, dirt track.
Yeah, dirt track, which is still some of the best racing that you're going to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's hard to go from that, I feel, and dial it back into a follow the leader kind of IndyCar or Formula One.
The pack racing out here was certainly something that appealed to you.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and it still does. I mean, I still have a tough time getting into the technical side of like F1.
Yeah. Kind of to your point too of not wanting to turn the wrenches, etc. So you end up coming out here and kind of getting into it. You all right? Motocross isn't going to be the deal. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go karting at CalSpeed. At what point did you start the SPV team, which it stands for something, and Scuderia
Pilota Veloce.
Yeah. And so how did you start it? Why did you start it? What was the thought, and when was that?
And how'd you come up with the name?
That sounds like a Diego thing.
There's a lot of Diego influence on SPV. Now the logo I think was probably me and Patrick primarily.
Mm-hmm.
But who was on the team?
Yeah, so I think if it goes back, like I said, my timelines may be a little off, but it does go back to SciCai, which was the Southern California Indoor Karting Invitational. Me and Patrick linked up a little bit on that and put that event on.
And what was that event? So
that was a one-night showdown. We brought in, I believe, probably 25 to 30 drivers. So we timed it at the same time that the 12-hour was going on for Dromo, and we had it on the Friday night.
Oh, cool!
Or the Thursday night before the event. So we had a lot of out-of-towners come in.
Yeah. I want to say that was 2010.
I believe it was probably 2010. Yeah. So we put that event on. One night showdown, first of its kind.
This had like some celebrity style drive, like some proper like car drivers were there too. I thought as well, a few of them anyway.
For I don't know exactly on the entry list, but the one thing that we definitely did different is we actually put a prize money package together. So I believe we were actually $1,000 to the winner.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
On a one-night event. And it was the first kind of event like that, but I had seen it in other spectrums of racing. I'm like, let's put this thing on. And I believe, if I remember the format, you had a few heat races where you never kind of raced more than the same person once. You know what I mean? So that we were able to move people around.
Right.
And then once it got to the main event, we instituted to where we would race a set of 10 karts, and then we would invert after the first. It was a 3-part main event, and you tracked the points for the 3 races. So we inverted the karts based on finish and see who could do the, and then I think whoever was leading after 2 rounds or something, we were able to have them guest pick what kart they would want for the final.
The idea is that you've got, a couple different rides at least. You're trying to make it as fair as possible.
Yeah.
And again, make it about the skills.
We had a program, and we had an announcer, and we tried to take it to another level, and that was kind of the first of its kind, and Dromo worked really well with us to make it happen. And that was my first event putting on. And I think everyone enjoyed it. And I remember John, I think, who actually ended up winning that event, came in, and he was probably 18 and had just bought a car, and he said, "Hey, I wasn't going to race, but this is my car payment." And
oh, wow.
Or half of it. I think he had half of it, and he said, "I'm not going to make my car payment, so I might as well try to race in this."
Yeah, get
and
the
make
money
the whole
for it.
thing.
Wow.
And he ended up winning, and he's like, that was the best night of his life at
That's
that point.
cool.
Yeah. So no, we had but going back to the team part of it, me and Patrick worked a little bit together on putting that event together.
Pat Britton?
Yeah. And then I think it was 2010, which we had the team of myself, Logan, Diego, Patrick, and John for the 12-hour to try to take you guys down and VLK. If I recall, I think that was the 5-driver team.
It would have been...
And that's the rain race, right? Was that 2010?
9.
Or the water barrel broke? And it was,
That's 9. Because
was that 9?
I didn't... Well, no, sorry. I think because we weren't there in 10. I didn't go. And we didn't have a team.
For Dromo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did 08 and 09.
I guess rain is water barrel breaking is as close as you can get to
with
rain
slicks,
for an indoor
yeah.
track.
I think what you're talking about is it. So we had a water barrel break in 09. I think it was. No, actually, it might have been 08. And they shit canned the outside.
At VLK.
No, this is at
Dromo.
Dromo.
Won. So Dromo won the 12-hour. They would actually open
a-
up the warehouse doors.
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
And they would add an outdoor section for the night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that was.
all right.
I think that was
That sounds like so much fun.
09 that happened. But then they did it again in 10, and there was actually a big crash again. So it might have that it happened in
Yeah, and that was
10.
like Logan's coming out party, because I remember we put him out at the beginning to start that event, and then the water barrel broke right at the beginning of the event.
Yeah, about half hour in, and then they
wow.
shut the entire outdoor section out. And
But the first stint, they didn't know what to do. They didn't want to stop the clock, so they let us. I mean, it was times went from, let's say it was a minute. I mean, they went to like 2 minutes. It was because the water would actually track indoors.
Yeah.
And it just turned it into a
Getting the whole track,
It was
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
But you said Logan had a good.
Logan
good
had a
run in
little
it.
bit of track or dirt track experience just being with me. You know, he never raced, but I mean, online before its time, I think it was dirt track racing was on our computer all the time, and so he had some familiarity with that kind of grip level.
Yeah.
And it kind of came out. I mean, he was able to hold his own and kind of had a little bit of a coming out party that.
When that happened, though, the water gets on the track, are you like, I should
wish I
probably
was
be
out
out there? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be out
Yeah.
there for sure, but no, and I can't remember. Like it's events don't really lock in my memory, but it was a great finish. I think we may have finished P2.
So, to stop on that for a second. So you've said a few times whether it's memory or events, shit kind of just happens and you forget about it. And Mike's the same way. I think you're the same way, actually, but certain events don't stick, which is funny because Mike's an encyclopedia about a lot of shit. But
certainly back then.
battles stick with you. Is that kind of the bigger thing?
Yeah, on track battles definitely stick. I mean, we'll get into it more, but
For sure, yeah.
But when I come on track, I don't. It's either first or last. You know what I mean? I hate losing more than I enjoy winning. So the losses probably stick with me more than any wins. Like I remember the championship. I couldn't tell you what year I won. I think it was 16 on this one, but it just doesn't. The win doesn't stick.
Yeah,
it's the losses that just stick with me and just make
man.
me push for that next time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's why I was surprised he did any racing at all after he won the championship.
Yeah.
It's like, pack it up, boys.
Yeah.
But speaking of winning, get back to the SPV deal. So basically, and you're going to tell the story, but I remember when I came out to CalSpeed in 11 and did my first Super Series, there's this group of SPV drivers, and it was all matching Sparko suits. And it was pretty much like you guys had a team of 5 or 6, and you were the top 5 or 6 in that Super Series day.
Yeah, no, and the team didn't originate local. It wasn't for a local thing. When we were racing Worlds and U.S. races with all the endurance racing, it was Blue Star in Belgium had their squad.
Okay.
And when you would go to the Worlds, you saw Blue Star, and they all stuck together, and they were at the top of the of the charts. So SPV kind of said, hey, we came together. It was us, and we said, let's put a team together that we can go compete with these guys at the world level, and let's put our best 5 together and see what we can do. And then that's when the whole transition happened here, and it kind of came out here, and we were able to
kind of naturally.
Yeah,
you're already working together.
And also part of me wanted, when I come to the track, I'm not here to be your best friend.
Yeah.
It's just after the races we can have all the fun we
You'll
want.
bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, but a good rivalry goes a long way. You know what I mean? And so I think the greatest thing was we formed SPV, and I think we dominated for years. I can't remember how many main events we won out here.
Well, and that was what was so funny. So my knowledge of karting before I came out here was just indoor at K1. So the next generation of what indoor karting became, right? And I come out here, I'm like, and there's conspiracy theories about you guys, CalSpeed, and you guys working together, and only SPV drivers are getting the best karts. And I remember my dad and I always bitched at him to stick around and watch the A main, because I was always like D or C, and eventually got to B. And then as soon as my race was done, he's like, let's get out of here, because it's a long ass day, right? But I remember the few times we got to stick around and watch, the A main, and it's the SPV guys at the sharp end. My dad goes, he's like, there's no effing conspiracy theory. He goes, these guys are just way better than everyone else, And I remember watching you guys, and I couldn't tell what you guys are doing different. I could just tell you were doing it better.
Yeah, I mean, we were under the clear understanding that you don't win a race in the first lap, you can definitely lose it. So I think back then the main events may have been 10 laps, maybe 12, but it was always, or the heat races, hey, let's work together for 8.
Yeah.
And then we'll let the best man win after that. So I think the team racing and understanding the draft, and we really pushed the elements as far as what happened out here. And so SPV, we won main events for 2-3+ seasons. I think no one else had won, and that was myself, John, Logan, Diego, and
Patrick.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
And so it was us, and we were always in the top 5, top 10, and it was a really, really fun time of racing. But then I think after that, T4 may have been the first, okay,
to start to break it up.
We're gonna take these guys and give them their best shot, and they really had the endurance side of things down,
right? And
they would compete with us at the endurance level, but just the racecraft, I think it took them a few years to understand what was really happening in an A main.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, you guys put the team together for the other events, and then when this place became the primary deal, you're already a team. Well, it just so happened that you were also 5 of the best drivers, period, in the arrive and drive game, and now you're on the same team. Now, you may be racing each other for Super Series win, but for you guys to all kind of dominate as long as you did, it made sense. Everybody else was trying to learn it. I mean, I remember coming down here in, I think it was 2009 or something like that, and we were going to do a charity deal with I was going to do it for a sponsor, and I remember meeting Taylor for the first time, and he was a K1 guy, and he had come over to Dromo, and Dromo basically ended shortly thereafter, so he was learning and learning and learning, and he's obviously a small guy, so he's also dealing with the weight stuff. So you get the top guys all on the same team, and everybody else is trying to figure out their lives, although to be fair, learning from you guys all at the same time, so eventually they end up doing the same thing that you guys did. We're going to put our own thing together to try to take down these guys.
And I think on the endurance side, they're very big on the statistics side. So they were getting the carts and they were doing the research, and on that side of the stuff, they definitely compete with a little bit of different X factors.
Maybe
not on track,
the
but
preparedness they're ready for. But yeah, the on track stuff they were a tick behind.
And so the A main, they didn't see the success as quickly. You know what I mean? But they eventually got it, and I think the grands and seeing all these other people come out and what really needed to happen.
Well, and it's so funny now. I'm starting to really put this all together because at first, like I said, when I first came out, I'm like, all right, these are all the guys that were the hot shit at whatever this place Dromo was, because I never got to go to that. And it definitely was that, but it was a group of guys that were the best, some of the best Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And they took that national and international competition to the club level, if you will, back to standard arrive and drive. So it definitely, and this is all realizing this right now, this is definitely all starting to make sense of how and why you guys were doing what you did and why you were so dominant, in those first few years.
Yeah, I mean, when you work, obviously, if you're going to put time in to try to win at a national or international or whatever level, when you go back to your home club or whatever, you should be one of the sharp end people by default. When it turns out that the club level is also turns into one of the biggest and best arrive and drive programs, period. Well, then it just starts. Everything starts.
And
to
the
grow
racing
from there.
out here was completely different.
Yeah.
So having that on our side probably definitely helped. It wasn't like you were going to your standard indoor place where the draft was a huge factor.
And we saw that in the first Sport Kart Grand Nationals in 2012, when people came from all over the country and overseas. They came here and like, woo, hold on a second, this is not at all the same. And so they had to learn how to drive the draft. Absolutely, yeah. And it just ended up being a completely different deal.
The racecraft definitely took a learning curve on CalSpeed when we started doing the Sport Kart Grands. A 3-day event with 2 days of practice beforehand.
It was very much our Supernats.
Yeah, it was, and
it also stemmed from the old USIKC.
Oh,
that was kind of where because we had all these guys that were looking for an event, and the United States Indoor Karting Championship wasn't there anymore.
What was the last year of USIKC?
Well, and that was just it. So
10?
Yeah, Brad and I came from CalSpeed to the what ended up being, we didn't know it at the time, but ended up being the final USIKC in 11. And we started talking to those guys at that time about, hey, we're going to put on this event called the Sport Kart Grands next year. Because we were thinking, hey, there's the indoor version and there's the outdoor version. Turns out there ended up being only an outdoor one version. And it ended up getting killed after that. So 12 was the first year, and that's how it all worked out. But
yeah, we started doing the first Sport Kart Grand Nationals, and this is going to be your first big outdoor event. Tell us a little bit about that first weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think because we had some prior history with the indoor stuff, we kind of knew the format. There was a lot of similarities with the Grands, but those were some of my favorite events for sure. Of course, when we would go to the other events back in the day, we were outsiders. The locals, Arizona, they had a little bit of a leg up. We felt like, okay, we're hosting this event at our track now. We have maybe a little bit of a leg up. We've got all this prior racing. We've got a great team around us. But it was the first year, I think, went to plan. I don't think everyone knew what to expect coming here. Mm-hmm. But year number 2, it was a battle royale. I mean, I know VLK ramped up there.
They definitely brought out a bigger team, yeah.
Yeah, even some outsiders from their territory, you know, and had, because they knew of what it took to win out here. You couldn't come out here as an individual and try to win. It was very, very difficult. You had to have a little bit of backing because of that draft.
When we had a team championship going on at the same time.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, I remember my team got formed on, I think, Thursday night because I'm like, team championship.
Well, and that's what was cool about it. We were talking about being the Supernats for sport karts. It was Wednesday practice, Thursday practice, optional, but and then Friday was race day, Saturday was race day, Sunday was race day. I say optional too. If you were going to do anything, you were going to be there. And the thing that made it really cool was 3 different tracks.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a track on Friday, there was a track on Saturday, and in the early days, and this is kind of a neat tie into the rest of CalSpeed, in the early days, Sunday was a brand new track no one had ever been on. You literally learned it session 1.
Yeah.
And what's cool about that is 2 of those tracks from the Sport Kart Grands that was basically a test bed for me and Brad and anybody else at the time in track design are still there today. Sportivo and Technico both came out of the Sport Kart Grand Nationals.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but even on the Wednesday, Thursday, so we'd have full day practices split into 2. I think there was a forward and a backwards.
On Thursday, we changed the track halfway through the day.
At the very end. So in the early days when we had the surprise track, it was Wednesday was practice day for the track you're going to be on Saturday. Thursday was the practice day for the track you're going to be on Friday because we would just leave it. And then I would change the track Saturday night to the brand new track, right? In the later events, when I got rid of the new track program, it went to you spent the first part of Wednesday on one track, the last little bit of Wednesday on another track. You started the next day on that same track, and then you finished Thursday on the third track.
Where you're going to start, yeah.
Yeah, so you get a chance to try all 3. So again, it kind of is like if you're going to go racing at Sport Car Grands, you're going to be there on practice day.
Mm-hmm. Going back to that, I want to talk to you. I really kind of want to dive into that first year because just the way you brought the international competitiveness and preparedness to Super Series, you definitely made sure you brought that to the national championship. What did you learn as a driver, and where did you kind of end that weekend at?
Yeah, no, we came into it pretty prepared. We knew what we were going to be up against, and if I recall, I believe Logan won that, and Logan at that stage had finally leveled up. I don't know who won 2012 Super Series, or
the 2012
was that the first year of the Grands?
12 was the first year of the Grands,
was.
and actually in both 10 and 11, it was I'm pretty sure on this John Kimbrell.
Okay,
so going in, we all think John Kimbrell is going to be top level guy, and I believe he was, but Logan had not won yet.
Right.
Logan ends up winning
the Grands,
12,
yeah,
and Super
wow.
Series that same
Okay.
year. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that was his kind of coming out year. And
It really was.
I think it just took him a few years to get it. But no,
nobody was upset at him winning the first year because we didn't know what was coming up next.
Fair enough, yeah.
5 years of just, yeah. But no, the Grands was such a great event. We have people coming in from all over. We've got a circus-sized tent out here, all our kart draws are live. I mean, it is like the top of the top, and 2 full days of racing into a track that you don't know. And so, Saturday night they'd set it up, for Sunday morning, and we're trying to figure out what corners they're using and
People
stuff.
were hanging out late on Saturday watching me put it together.
Yeah, no, it was really exciting times, and it was just a nice, refreshing change from the indoor side of things. And I think the out-of-towners maybe didn't enjoy it as much the first year. I think they grew to like it, especially maybe Fred and the VLK guys.
Yeah.
But it was just it was high intensity. You had to bring it.
It was a hot weekend.
Hot every race. You had to be on your A game.
Did happen in June every year.
Yeah. Perfect time for that event.
Yeah, but we came out on top. I think I don't recall exactly how many we had on the podium or top 5, but we definitely had our fair share. And 13, and they just kept on getting better and better. Man, it was really, really cool.
It's funny when I got to do. I was stoked. I got to do that first Grands, but I remember leaving that weekend, and I was at that point I was probably like a solid B-main guy. I remember leaving that weekend and thinking, I don't know how much more I can learn within 3 or 5 days of driving that I just did in this weekend,
We used to see that a lot, too. So we would host the Sport Kart Grands, and the whole second half of the season for Super Series, you'd see drivers, and Derek, you were one of them, flip a switch.
Yeah, whoever raced the Grands, like, you elevated your game probably 10 spots.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Going into the second half of the year.
And you didn't have to be a hot shit driver going in, but you would leave being around one of those guys at one point and going, holy shit.
Yeah. You went in as a D- and came out a D+.
Right, yeah.
and they had 1 lap qualies, so every race, if I recall, there was no grid set.
Was it 1 lap quality for that?
It was at the end. For
May have been
sake of
2.
time. I think
it may have been
was,
2 at the beginning, but it was still, you had to put your lap down, and then they would order you based off of that. So learning that element of trying to push and then, race, and you make a mistake, especially out here at the early, you get trained.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be 8 guys that go by you if you put yourself in the wrong position in the wrong corner. You know what I mean? So it was, I think, just the knowledge that was gained in those weekends and just battling with ultra competition and looking at the mistakes that you made and just trying to learn from those. It was and again,
awesome. Not just from all across the states, but we'd have people flying in every year.
Yeah, a group from England, a few drive.
Yep.
Can't remember his
Brierley.
name. Sean Brierley and that whole group, but I can't remember the dude's name right now from the Middle East.
Sam Zayn?
Yeah.
Yep.
That guy was always a sharp driver. Kind of going through your arrive and drive stuff right now. I mean, we had the Grands up until 2016 was the last year. But
if you don't see, I'm shaking my head.
The look of disappointment right now on Miles' face.
I did find it's where you got second. It was 16 the last
almost.
year.
I was just waiting for 17.
Yeah. Throughout those next few years, this arrive and drive, you're progressing a lot, and whether you're winning or not winning, because you're still at the sharp end of arrive and drive stuff. What was happening for you on this side of the sport?
Yeah, I think there was I was a little bit maybe more of a hothead when I was a little bit younger, 16, 17. So there was a lot maybe of mental maturity going on. I always had the speed to race up front. I felt even more the racecraft, and that's why I was so disappointed with the Grands. Is I really felt like that event set up for me so well because it was all racing. You know what I mean? Like, it was just full-fledged, elbows out. You had to race.
Yeah.
I think Logan, and I think maybe what hurt me a little bit was my Super Series rivals.
Yeah.
Logan did a really good job of being a politician on and off the track. You know what I mean? I think that's why he excelled so much at those early years. Is I knew I had my team around me, but after my team, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
And it was when you get into those large events, because on Super Series, we're always going to the cream is going to the top, but those Grands, you're bringing in a lot of outside people. You're spread out between 4 events, so you're not just an A and a B heat, because it was still a lot smaller, maybe in that realm of things. I don't know if we had gotten up to 4 heats in the Super Series, so we weren't as spread out, but Grands we were. And I think I learned over time that's probably was my biggest, is because I'd have to go out with my elbows up and really fight, where Logan would just befriend everybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, he'd get random help from individuals, and I'm like looking at, I'm like, man, it was cool at the beginning, but after 13, 14 or whenever, it was getting old,
Well,
because I'm not getting that same love, but
it's funny to look at the personality differences in you guys. You both, even, and we've said it in previous podcasts, you come out from Machismo, you want to win. You come out for Classico, you want to win, and you've done pretty good at that lately. But as you've gotten older, he's gotten a little bit more laid back, and so have you in your own way, but you're still more the serious brother. He's kind of the goofball.
Yeah, I've always been super serious. I mean, I think it's just part of my DNA.
Just who you are, yeah.
I mean, if I'm showing up, I'm going to be in it, I'm not here to, like I said, we can talk all you want after the races, that's fine, but I'm going to put on an intimidating factor. I felt, from the time I arrive.
Yeah.
And I got to I love that too, because we have the All-Star race now, the Classico GP weekend, and the All-Star race is literally top drivers that we can find and whatnot. For in the first couple of seasons here, first couple of years we've done it, because we started it with the 100th Super Series, so 2 years ago, and then last year. And freaking Miles is over here with a notebook on karts from the day and whatnot, and he's not smiling. He's not having a good time.
But
I'm here to win, and everybody else is like joking around, screwing around, having.
I love seeing that though, because probably the only guy that does it now is Chris Huerta, and he's an official now. So it's not like he needs to do that to get any kind of gain out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, even in the endurance side of things, I mean, we took some teams that probably didn't belong, even because we did some experimental stuff along, but I did enjoy the strategy and stuff like that a part of it. But as far as a race weekend, when it was up to me, there wasn't. And then it got worse and worse. Probably up to 16 is that the final year where I was tired of my brother winning. I wasn't happy for him anymore. It was like, it's my time to shine. And so 16 Super Series and 16 Grands. It was
and
there wasn't a whole lot of friendly conversation happening. Yeah.
And what I love about that, and before I get into the 2016 year, and I do want to put a little bit of time in the 2016 year, I do want to put a point on that, what I was going to say at the All-Star race. Miles is probably doing it right. He's won both of them. So maybe I need to get a little more serious coming from last.
And arguably probably like one of the hardest tracks we have now is that All-Star track.
It's a nice little blend of what CalSpeed normally is, plus a little bit of that indoor-esque stuff going on.
But it's funny because, I come out for practice. You probably don't even think I'm going to be mid-pack. I mean, there's definitely a few laps, especially like when Classico comes out or something like that, that it takes me a few laps to get it back. You know what I mean? But once it's race time.
Oh, well, dude.
Rock and roll.
Let's go.
For this next Classico GP we got, man, if you're out here on Friday practice, I'm putting the helmet on because I can finally keep up with Miles Calvin now.
Oh, he's not coming out. He's part owner of a business now. He's not coming out on Friday. So you kind of just mentioned at the tail end there that you weren't really stoked on Logan getting the dubs anymore, right? I mean, it was one of those things where, right, you guys have been running out here since hardcore since 12. And Logan's gotten some dubs. You've gotten race wins, but and hardware in the championship, but no championships. We come into 2016, and Logan has won the Sport Kart Grands in 2012. He also won the Sport Kart Grands in 2015, and I want to say the championship, the Super Series championship again in 2015. I believe. I could be wrong. Could be 14, somewhere in there. Point being, 16 starts. And Miles Calvin comes out of the gate hot.
Yeah, so let me give you a little brief. So 14, I took the year off.
Right.
Most of it.
Right.
For
some other kind of shenanigans or
so
something.
I got married, you know what I mean? Those kind of shenanigans. Missed the Grands in 14, took a little bit of a break in sport karting. I think 15 presented some different opportunities, but it was a partial, and I kind of got back into it at the late part of 15 to where 16 was like, okay, this is my year. Like, I am ready to finally cap something off and put the exclamation point and call it done. You know what I mean? Because like I said, second place doesn't do it for me.
Right.
It keeps me up at night. You know what I mean? So I've seen enough.
And at this point, you're married and kids are coming. So the being up at night is going to be on its own. You don't need sport karting to be doing it.
Right. And I don't think we had any kids yet, but I knew the time was coming.
Right.
So
you better get some good sleep.
I better get this out of the way now before who knows if I can even be racing in the next year or two.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there was a lot of thoughts going on, and so 16,
a lot of motivation.
Yeah, 16 came around, and if I recall, I think I started with the top of the box right out of the first Super Series of.
You won the first two, and I could be wrong. I want to say 3 out of the first 4. It definitely the first 2 you won back-to-backs. It was a hell of a start to a season.
Yeah, so I was ready, and then coming into 16 Grands, I was still, I think, at the top of the points list. Logan was very, very close behind, or if not, maybe tied with drops and stuff like that.
Right.
But 16 Grands, I don't remember exactly how it shook up. If I recall, Logan had a pretty stellar run.
He finished second to Wood. It came down to the super final for those two, actually.
Yeah, but I believe, because I think I got second in 16, if I recall, at the Grands.
I thought you may have got third or
maybe
fourth. Yeah.
But it was close. I was right there.
You were in the top 5 for sure.
And I was a little disappointed after that. But Logan was so far out in front and going into the super final that it didn't even matter for him. You know what I mean? So I think we kind of tagged up in the super final.
Yeah,
and got me to second, I think.
Yeah, you guys entered the Sport Kart Grands rivals in super, right? Mm-hmm. It turns out even more so than I even knew, with not wanting Logan to win anymore. But he had the advantage going in. Going in, I don't think it was a scenario where you had a shot. I think it was kind of like either he clinched it or it was really good.
Yeah. And so I think that was a little bit of a dagger, but it gave me the motivation, I think, for the second half of the Super Series year to pull it off.
And on my end, I'm having a blast because in all the previews that I was writing and stuff like that, I've been writing previews for the Super Series, Ironman, so on and so forth since, I want to say 13, 14, something like that. But I've been trying to build that hype train. And you guys were giving me so much great stuff. And I coined it the Brothers War. Mm-hmm. And it was it was Miles Calvin versus Logan Calvin. And it just so happens that they did good enough to kind of space out the rest of the world. It really was just the two of them going for the championship. And what was great is you guys leave the Grands, which happens about dead nuts in the middle of the season, and you were a point leader, but Logan got the Grands. And Logan had won the championship in 12 and I believe 15 Super Series after winning the Grands as well.
Right. So I definitely was like, okay, this could turn into going the other direction to where I end up second fiddle in both of these for the final,
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going to be my final year at that point, but I knew it was coming down to a close end. You know what I mean?
And you couldn't handle another Thanksgiving the way it was.
No. And I think earlier, I just to touch on this so you understand where, I got married in 14. And at some point earlier, you had said, it was always like Logan was second fiddle. He was always little brother till at some point, and I believe it was probably, if you look back, that 14 year, you know what I mean? I'm starting a new life with my wife, and he's now trying to find his own identity because we're not hanging out every day at home anymore.
Right.
So if you take it back, I believe that's kind of where you'll see
outside world stuff coming in.
Until I'm not seeing him on a daily, especially in 16. And both of us took that rivalry to another level that year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember the Grands, I remember that year in the Super Series all the way up to the final round. I mean, it was
very much so that final
very,
round.
very, very close. No more than probably 10 or 15 points to 20 max.
It was close.
Yeah. And so what I remember like it was yesterday is that last round of the Super Series, it was round 12 or round whatever it may have been. We go into the A main, and I think I had maybe a 10 or 15 point lead.
Right.
And
at the sharp end, it's 5 points splits to
every
about
position.
6 or 7.
Yeah.
And so we end up halfway through that A main. Logan's winning. I think I'm second, and he puts on the brakes. We're out in front of the field.
You're actually point wise. You were leading, and he needed
more positions
people
in between
you
us.
guys. Yeah.
And so
Mark Connell actually touched on this in the same year in his podcast because he's trying to win the championship over Sergio Bravo for Masters, and he's in like no man's land in like 7th.
He just has to drive. Good. He's chilling.
It's all good, and then Logan puts on the brakes and starts doing one of the most honestly. One of the best races I've ever seen to try to get the rest of the world involved and not be slow. It was crazy.
Nothing, that was like point. Like if you were just watching the race, you'd probably just think that we reeled them in. Like it was not even to that noticeable degree. But when you're driving behind them, and the braking just happened just a touch earlier, and either trying to get a black flag, you know what I mean, out of something that I may do, or try to get these guys to catch up. And get a few more carts in between us.
And he succeeded.
In the train.
To go on to that point for a second, Logan's, both of you guys are some of the best out here. And it's the other way of thinking that we've always really commended you two on, as well as the rest of, honestly, the SPV group. Mark brought that up too, because he got coaching from Logan. He was hanging around you two. You were helping him out and shit. And he goes, the way these guys think, he said, it's like a beautiful mind. There's numbers and figures, up in the sky. You're just seeing all shit happen at a time. And that's one of the things I've always really tried to talk. Mike and I do the clinics, and we're always trying to talk about big picture stuff when we're working with the advanced guys, and that was big picture thinking, but that is some off the wall shit that he was doing.
That was probably one of the first times, not one of the first times, but a grand time in my mind that said, I was a little proud inside because that would be definitely something I would have been doing, 100%. Yeah. But to see that Logan has now graduated, for me not even having to instruct him on what he needed to do, because we were rivals. And to see him do that, I knew exactly the first time he did it what he was doing. And I didn't really he put up enough resistance to where I couldn't pass him.
Right.
But I also didn't want to, it was like, let's just keep on going as much as possible. But I don't remember exactly where I finished, but I knew it was enough within the positions that I needed.
Right. So I remember watching this race, though, and yet you guys, the crowd comes to you or whatever, and there is you two plus 5 to 6 other karts in this group now. And it is almost like stuff is working out to where no matter who's in between you two or around you guys are still racing each other.
Yeah.
And everyone else is at the will of whatever the Calvins are doing in this group.
Because what Logan's trying to do is he's trying to not only get the rest of the world involved, but then still stay in front of the pack.
Yeah, exactly.
So in general, you're going to work together to get away from everybody. Now what he needs to do is bring everybody here and then still have enough to stay out front.
And separate and get back to the lead.
Yeah.
And leave me in the
still
dust.
trying to dictate that much.
Yeah, he needed to be the leader and he needed Miles to go backwards. Well, you can't create, and I want to say that Logan still crossed the line in front of you.
I believe he did.
But it wasn't enough points-wise. You did what you need to do across the whole year. And damn, did I have a good time writing about it. It was awesome.
So this is one of the things I've always thought was super cool about you because, and I'll bring this up later on when we talk about 206, but in this race, you pull off, maybe it was the main or a heat race, but it was that day you pull off a pass on Logan and you come out of Long Beach and you just do it like a fist pump. You're like, F yeah, and it's happened a few times in other shit I've seen you race, but as serious as you are, you can appreciate that move you just did.
I mean, I think there was always a lot of success in my passing through those first few years in Super Series or Grands. I mean, I probably had some of the best passes that you could muster up going into 4 or, passing 2 guys or,
4 for
but
sure.
I always just left it just a touch short as far as, not getting the right, cart or something. There was always just something that just was missing in those. And so 16, it was like, we're going to create our luck. We're not going to rely on it. You know what I mean?
I like that.
So it was, and there was no teammate at all. It was me.
Right.
know?
Yeah. And to your point, right there is that you always had Logan.
Yeah.
There was always going to be Logan. And now, like you said, you have no teammate. The guy that you would normally, rub elbows with and be all good with is the guy you're trying to beat more than anybody else. So you have no teammate.
It really, I think Logan, because he's such a nice guy, going in the first half of the year, we were all hugs and kisses. It wasn't like I was winning and he was second and everything was close. But I believe there was probably halfway through the year where I was like, okay, this is the time to try to create separation. And it kind of caught him off guard because it just wasn't what we normally do.
And you guys aren't driving to the track together at this point anymore, huh?
No,
You're both
it was a complete separate.
He totally used the Sport Kart Grand's high that Logan was on to, infiltrate the feelings, the heartstrings.
Someone has to bring Logan down a tick, and who better than the big brother,
Yeah, big brother. You know what? You had talked about, you made some good passes and stuff like that, and I said at the very, very beginning, I've been a Miles Calvin fan for a long, long time because not only did we put on the races, but I'm a race fan. I've always really, we talk about all the crap that I can remember. And some of the best racing, some of the best passes. I've always been somebody who, like you, not the fastest, but I'll take pride in what I can do in the passing game. And I always felt like, God, if I could run Super Series, Miles Calvin is like the guy. It's always been my thing too. And agreed 100%. Some of the shit that you've been able to do behind the wheel of a sport cart, whereas maybe Logan might be faster. He's got stupid number of records, poles, and all those other kinds of crap.
Logan's been always good on the left foot. Miles, you've always had the finesse, I think.
Yeah, and I think
you've been able to pull things off that are pretty awesome.
15, I think I had to just maybe take a step back and maybe just pick up a few things from Logan for probably the first time in my life. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, okay, there's something he's doing a little bit different. He's taking everything I'm giving him, but he's just got something else, working for him. And it was a little bit to do with politics. I think you would probably see my manner around the pit area change a little bit between 15 and 16. I had gotten married, so it was a little bit of maturity, but I knew I needed some friends outside of just my circle.
And for more than just one lap.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of that I was able to pull from him, but also just Logan really took, if you looked at his lap times, they were very, very repeatable.
Yep.
Within hundredths in the same cart, he could, and I would pick,
not only that, be able to find the most out of every ride.
And I would pick his brain a little bit, and just understanding what was going through his mind probably helped me just get me over that little bit of an edge going into 16.
It's so funny. I think I may have been talking to Logan about this. It's been a few years now, but it's one of those scenarios where you guys are racing each other and you both know each other's tricks, and you're trying to think not the third but the fourth step ahead. You're countering the counter, all this other kind of stuff.
Chess in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and out of all the seasons, that one definitely. I know that was probably his first loss when he was in contention. I don't think he's ever gotten second.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't recall. It was either he was in fifth and it just didn't go his way. But for the first time, I think
to be in the conversation and then not come out on top.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit. So that was tough for him to, I think, swallow as well. And I just think if you ask both of us, I'd probably say that it was one of our most fierce but loving battles that we've ever had. Yeah.
You win
definitely entertaining.
Yeah.
You win 16, and the cool part about the Super Series is on the day of the finale we have the banquet. Thank you. Immediately after, just down the street, actually here in the Speedway. But you get off the track. You did the points ahead of time. I'm sure you're like, all right, I came out top.
I knew where I needed to be. Yeah.
Did you have a sigh of relief?
And I think I did definitely have a sigh of relief. And I think for the first time through that entire year, Logan actually came up and said, congrats. You know what I mean? Cool. I think it was cool for someone to push him to that next level, because like you said, we both knew each other very, very well.
Yeah.
All the tricks. I mean, I've taught him all.
Almost like you were related. Yeah.
But there's countless conversations you got to know going home talking about. I mean, we would, before everyone else, we were videotaping races.
Yeah.
And we would watch and talk about moves and what you do in this. So to have it come full circle and actually have us two being in each other's way of winning this championship, it was really, really fun. Yeah.
Nice.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
Now, obviously, 2016 ends with the exclamation point that you were looking for, right? To finally get that Super Series championship, and again, who better to best but your brother to do it? But going into 2017, you end up getting in the 206 game. When we had talked to Mark Connell, he knew that he was going to do that anyway, and so he really wanted to win the championship. And again, like you, he was able to do that. Had you guys already talked about getting into 206s before the year had finished out?
I think that was kind of going through the paddock. Is the Super Series it's been awesome. Let's go test our talents elsewhere. Now, I before that I had dabbed into PRD, but I think my strong suit was always a 4-stroke motor. You know what I mean? I think that's why I had so much success in the Super Series.
Yeah, and actually, I forgot about that. Let's cycle that back a little bit. What year did you do PRD racing, and how did that whole thing come about?
So if I had to guess, it was probably 15.
It was,
yeah. Is that 15? Oh, yeah, I guess I could ask.
So
Derek
I was
did it too.
It was a lot less Super Series and more outdoors that year. And so we had some family friends that, were looking to start up a team, and so I assisted them with that and put the PRD package together, and I had never been outdoors, but I knew how to drive a sport kart pretty damn well.
Right.
So it was like, yeah, I can compete with anybody. Let's go.
And the PRD pilot game was rolling at the time. PRD was the engine to race in the senior levels at the time.
Yeah.
So the senior class was pretty big, and then they had the quote pilot or your sportsman level, the
entry level,
if you will. Yeah. And Derek, you're in there. Right.
Shit, dude, we picked a hell of a year to move up because it was us, Alyssa Yanni.
Yeah.
Logan was racing, but in the proper senior category.
Yeah, he had already moved up.
He had already been doing it for another year. Drew Zeller, Riley Dugan.
Yeah.
So
we had a good group of guys to learn off of.
For sure.
And we were all very, very similar in speed on that PRD year.
And all sport karters from the Super Series for the most part.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, I'll be 100% honest. It was tough. To walk away getting a top 5 was not normal for me because we did go back. I raced you in the Super Series. I raced Riley. I'd walk circles. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then you get into this PRD, and for whatever reason, I mean, we were we had decent funding, but we were trying to cut some corners on chassis and stuff like that. And so you walk away and you're just like, is it the equipment or is it me? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's just not working out.
Dude,
fifth place in a pilot category isn't doing it for me. You know
well,
what
dude,
I mean?
even nowadays, I mean, I've now really gotten to the point where I'm, again, confident in your ability, where I'm like, no, that was a go-kart, or no, it was me. And then sometimes I'm like, I hope that was a go-kart, you know? But I think your guys' strong suit, and we'll bring this up again in 206, you're in Logan's strong suit. You've always been low horsepower, low grip. You know, not that the PRD is fast by any means, but you got to drive a little different. It's a tag chassis.
Yep,
You got
two-stroke.
It's a yeah. And
different power bands, everything. And I think what also hurt us, especially that first year, is we're probably going on 6-8 years of driving whatever was given to us.
Right.
Yeah. Adapt.
So the feedback was almost impossible to nil, because I just said, well, it just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I can't tell you. I just know that this one felt good and this one didn't. You know what I mean? When I was driving, sport carts.
Well, and that was the funny part. Like when I, because we're kind of all into the Steve Jasinski camp, right? Mm-hmm. I had tested a CRG prior to that. The racing starting, and then I tested the Tony kart. And I'm like, I can't tell you why, but the Tony car is what I want to be on, you know?
Going back to that, you said that even in the sport carts, you're like, well, this one I like better than the other one, but I couldn't really tell you why.
Well,
what did you not have? And actually, I've had that same conversation with John Kimbrell before, where, hey, why? And you couldn't really answer the why. He was still bloody good at adapting, but he didn't understand the chassis dynamics and how shit worked. Was it similar for you, where you would do it naturally but didn't know why it was working?
Well, you go back to the sport car, there's hundreds of issues that it could be. You know what I mean? The chassis could be bent and it turns right really good, but it doesn't turn left. You know what I mean? But we would make it work, and so I couldn't tell you that, it needed more toe or it needed more camber, or I didn't know. I could tell you that it went around the corner way better than it went right than left, or but we drove it. We figured it out. You know what I mean?
A little bit get into the PRD, and without that, hows and whys, it was kind of like, well, this is good or bad.
Yeah, there was a lot of test days just trying to figure it out. But in karting, you can make two adjustments and they counter each other.
Right.
Yeah. So we were under limited amount of time to try to test. We're under older chassis that probably don't fit us completely as a driver. You know what I mean? And we're trying to figure this thing out, messing with ride heights, and I'm 6'2", I'm pretty tall. So then I'm battling
there's
center of gravity.
Another variable, yeah.
And with this extra grip, I never had a battle. That was probably in my advantage before. Now it's a disadvantage because I'm getting way too much side bite.
Especially with no knowledge of seat position or anything like that, and how that affects the go-kart.
And we had Steve on our side, but Steve was probably pretty new to the
learning.
game. Yeah, we're all learning together, and we're trying to put information together. And it was a very difficult time in the racing side of things, because it just wasn't. I didn't get the enjoyment out of what I was getting before.
Yeah.
And that happens in 15. Is that why you kind of go all in on 16? Because you didn't run PRD, if I remember correctly. You didn't run the competition carts in 16. No. It was sport carts.
It was just the 1 year,
I think funding fell out a little bit from the team, and I wanted to give it a go. And so, 16 was like, we're going to do the Super Series thing, and we're going to, because it also made sense. Outdoors is so expensive, you know what I mean? And so
certainly when you go two-stroke, it's a hell of a jump from a arrive and drive.
Well, and to add on to that, I mean, if you had the funding, were you going to try to do it another year, you said?
I wasn't having as much fun as I thought. I mean, if we had enough funding to maybe go get new chassis and also like being freshly married, you're trying to
priorities change.
You're trying to, adjust, and you're trying to balance out, all your time, and going into it, money was the main factor,
right?
For sure.
But you understand how much time it takes, not just at the track, but I think the biggest thing was how much time is off track.
Yep.
You got to clean,
or in between the events.
Yeah, that gets put in, and so I wasn't gaining the knowledge because I didn't have that amount of time. I mean, I'm fresh into my career. Steve's doing a lot of the wrenching at. On my ride.
But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, you don't know the hows and the whys. You don't understand it. So there's only one way to do that, and it's being at the track, driving it,
putting
learning,
in the time,
which you just didn't have.
Right.
So this is something I always love talking about, is drivers that have moved up or come from other stuff to arrive and drive. You had, before even winning the championship at 16, you already had success in Super Series. Purity, didn't quite go how you wanted to, but you come back to arrive and drive. What was your perspective on karting at that point? As far as like, I just spent $2,000 on this weekend and finished 5th or 4th, and I'm gonna go back to spending $135.
Well, luckily, like I said, 15 when we did do the outdoors, we had some decent funding behind us.
For sure, yeah.
So the money wasn't necessarily coming out of my pocket.
Right.
Luckily,
yeah, but you knew what it cost.
Of course, you knew what it took. If you went in for a pass and it didn't go right, what it was going to cost.
Yeah.
Never mind just the time on engine, things like that.
Yeah. So the PRD, it was like an intro. Went back. I did the Super Series. We lost our funding a little bit, and then I think 17. It was like, hey, this LO206 is making a heck of a, putting some traction down, and there's a lot of people going this way.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, we got a 4-stroke motor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
So
that was
when you went and did PRD the first time, right? It was like, I'm pretty good at this. I want to move myself up. But you kind of alluded to that earlier when I went back to the PRD. Sticker shock and other things and blah, blah, blah. But when you go back to going competition karting again, having done PRD, what made you go, I want to do it again? Was it strictly the fact that this is closer to what I know what to do?
I was looking for that 4-stroke motor, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, even when I was in the PRD, looking to try to find a KXF, a 250F motor, that I could go shifter racing or whatever. Because my entire motorcycle, it was all 4-strokes.
Yeah.
I never rode. I mean, maybe my first bike, the PW80, was a 2-stroke, but it was automatic. It wasn't.
But you got in the PRD, it was going against everything you've been teaching yourself or have learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It didn't come naturally at all. But the 206, and I'm like, I can drive these things. You know what I mean? And I don't really have to worry about a ton of setup. Because in the RLV chassis, everyone has to run it the way it is.
Spec setup, yeah.
So it was kind of inviting, and I'm like, yeah, let's go give this thing a go.
And that's just what it was supposed to be, is inviting, right?
Yeah. And the racing was just as fun.
It was badass, dude.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And then I got to go and measure myself up against some of the guys that I knew that could drive outdoors, and I felt like I could hang. You know what I mean? So,
and you were running, I want to say, 2 classes out of the gate, spec and
pro.
Senior. At the time, it was the same weight, so you could do the crossover. And what was interesting, too, about the spec is it had to be all VLR, right? These are the parameters. And you were able to do that with John Cambrell and some of these other people that you'd already raced sport karts. In Senior, it's open to any chassis manufacturer, etc. Derek and I are running. Matt Johnson's running. These other guys are running. So you actually got a chance to kind of test waters in 2 different levels of, I shouldn't say levels, 2 different groups of drivers.
Yeah. Competition karting and arrive and drive kind of meet,
Yeah,
a little bit.
And for me, it was all, I did the spec because it was there. I was here. I might as well pay another $25 or whatever and race, get me as much track time. But the spec class, it was Senior. If I'm going to race, I want to win. You know what I mean? And to see myself, okay, I know I have the ability, and now I can at least showcase it against people that I know that can drive. It was fun. It brought the fun back into it for sure.
Well, dude, and going back to what I had mentioned before the podcast, like Matt Johnson talks to you about you and your brother a little bit when you got to racing in 206, and he's like, I come out, he's like, I'm trying to rough these guys up, and they're not taking it, and they're making it just as hard to get by me, and and I think back to how you had that little fist pump when you passed Logan in that main event. We're going counterclockwise up here on the old CalSpeed layout, so that turn 4 is kind of soft and then sharpens up at the apex, and you send it up in the inside of Matt, no contact, but you just again do the finesse. You get right in front of him, and I'm on the sidelines watching. I see that little fist come up in Miles, and he pumps. I'm like, I'd be pretty stoked if I just passed Matt like that too, man.
And that was in the spec class. So, you all got the same crap going on as far as equipment. You had mentioned earlier, though, you weren't a fan of the wrenching game.
Right.
So on track, you're enjoying it. It's funny. Yeah, he's already like, you're right, I don't. What was it about the wrenching that you didn't enjoy? You had mentioned about the ease of just showing up with your helmet and whatnot, but Now you're digging the on track. So why it's not a total package for you though?
I think it was just time. You know what I mean? I had limited amounts of time, and for me, I don't get that much of enjoyment out of cleaning or tuning up a go-kart.
Right.
I just don't.
I agree with you.
For sure, cleaning. Yeah.
And so when you're trying to race and create as much time to get on track, it was, I don't want to be. And Logan, Logan's doing the same thing. He got about a year head start on us. We actually, I think it was probably 15 went pretty full out.
He did the X30 stuff, I think.
Was that 15?
Oh, no. 15, he was doing PRD Senior when we were doing Pilot.
Right.
16, he moved up to X30 and tried to do some of that.
Did he do that at the same time as the Super Series stuff?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
So we did have some good times outside of the track, other Super Series, because
I remember you guys working together on the team.
Yes,
yeah.
we were working together there. But when it came to Super Series, it was definitely a whole other ballgame.
Yeah.
But we went down the X30 route, and that was another.
That's a bump up beyond PRD.
And Logan always had it. Logan went to Italy in 14, I think, came back, placed top 5.
Yeah, Kart World Championship.
One of the best finishes again by American. And those were shifters, and that took him to another level. He came back and started competing with Matt, even in outdoors. And so I think what was nice to see for getting back to your original, but sport karting always was looked down upon around here.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the outdoor guys that would come on the weekends, and they were probably pissed that there was a Super Series scheduled this day. Like, we never got any respect. And I would say, to my recollection, the first person that gave us any kind of respect was probably Casey Cook.
Yeah.
Going out in the shifters with Baldozier and actually competing.
Yeah.
On the Tony. I mean, people started looking at these guys like, okay, maybe these guys can drive a little bit. You know what I mean?
And it came to a head when we went 206 racing.
For sure. I was just about to say.
I remember being on the sidelines again with Frank, because Frank had already plucked Casey, to your point, and they'd done pretty well. And Casey had come from, I want to say, MRC. Originally doing the MRC stuff with the shifter stuff, and then got the deal with with Baldozier afterwards. Point being is that it was a sport karter moving on up through the ranks. And I remember being on the sidelines watching spec, because I wasn't going to race in spec. I was running senior and masters. But Frank had either a Matt Johnson or a John Crow or whoever else.
He had the ringers out there
in the spec deal, and they weren't setting the world on fire in spec. Against the sport karters, they were elbows up rolling. And he's like, man, these sport karters are all right. I'm like, yeah, I know.
So before Frank or even Matt or John have the thought of these sport karters are rolling, these guys are rolling, and they're like, where did this influx of karters come from? Because at 206 at the time, it just started, for 4 races before in 16.
Yeah,
but all of a sudden, these painted helmets show up. You got these asshole brothers with some matching suits, and they're both rolling.
Yeah,
but it went from going, who are these guys, to and I know John Crone did this because he was racing Mark Connell and Mike, but John goes up to Mark goes up to John and scales after practice. He goes, hey, dude, I just got to say it's an honor to be racing with you. And he goes, and John says something back, and Mark's like, yeah, I did some arrive and drive or whatever. And John's like, don't bullshit me, man. I know what you've done. He goes, I've done my research. But
John had paid attention.
He was the smart driver to learn exactly who he was racing against. But it was after that I really think after that opener of 206 racing that we had in 17, the spotlight hit the Arrive and Drive series. Like, there's some talent coming out of this shit right now.
Yeah, these guys can drive, Yeah. And I think going back, I didn't listen to Matt's podcast, but no, Matt and John, I mean, we had some epic battles in 206 that year. You know?
Dude, it could have been for first or for eighth. It was badass.
It's all nose to tail anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was up towards the top, and I think they thought that they could, like I think Matt probably said, that they could come in and ruffle our feathers.
Clean up,
and I wasn't going to take it. I mean, my theory always on track is I'm going to race fair, but I'm going to race hard. You know what I mean? And if you want to play games, let's play games, because I'm going to play them better. You know what I mean? And so Matt came in and, now the open wheel concept had me, I mean, we've always had wraparounds. You know what I mean? And I would never had a fear of anything.
Now it's another dynamic.
Right. So it was a little bit, but there was enough rubbing and racing, nothing ever happened. I'm like, okay, we can get after this stuff, you know?
Yeah. The risk isn't as high as maybe I originally thought out of the gate.
Yeah. So, I mean, we
got more comfortable.
I was getting in there, and I was racing like I would normally race.
And shit, dude, you probably had more chance of bicycling and come out of your car than you were flipping from hitting somebody.
Which
you know,
he did, both.
Oh, that's kind of what...
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
wait.
Yeah, so I think it was
soon.
17, right?
Yeah, I think that was damn near the end of
Towards
17.
the end of 17.
Oh, man, I totally forgot about that.
Because before that, I think it might have been the finale.
No, it wasn't that late. It was summer, I think.
Was it still summer?
It was late summer, I think, and it was me and John at the top, at the sharp end.
That's right.
And it was probably 2 laps to go, and we were going back and forth. I think it was... it
was forward.
Yeah, what configuration where we go in the back straight, make a U-turn, and then come around reverse horseshoe.
Sportivo.
Yeah, Sportivo. So, we go into the 90. I pass John. We go back through horseshoe, and we're side by side. And, man, I gave myself, I thought, enough room. But, yeah, I clipped the inside of Long Beach and flipped, and there was 20 other carts coming behind us. And, yeah, that was a little bit of an eye-opener, and definitely the end of what it was, I think, for the LO206 mentally, and just knowing what I had to risk at home with the company and everything.
Yeah.
And maybe I can add on to that. I remember, though, after that, we still went to Streets of Lancaster.
Yeah, so that was like an invitational event, right?
Exactly.
And I had not been back on track
since then. Okay. I did not know that.
Maybe once. Maybe one event after, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Yeah. And for the first time, I must say that I was a bit nervous and then I went to Streets of Lancaster, which was probably the worst mistake I ever made.
Did you do that? Wait, you did Lancaster after you flipped?
Mm-hmm. First race back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hit on the head definitely did something.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess that's because I know that when we were at Lancaster, it wasn't the same miles that we had earlier in the year,
Right.
And so it was Miles had it was invite only, right, for the most part. I was going, Miles was going, Logan was going. We were all going together, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're sharing the same, area. And Logan's doing Logan's thing. I'm doing my thing. And Miles is he's off. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, what is going on? But your demeanor wasn't the same, and
different tire compound.
Yeah, it was different tire compound, and obviously it's a street course and a little bit lower grip. But I was like, hey, that should actually be better for Miles. The lower grip anyway. Mm-hmm. The street course portion now I understand. There was a bit of a trauma, might be the wrong word, but it was,
I don't want to get hurt though.
Well, I just think that all the racing I did, it was mono we're going to cause, and I think for Streets of Lancaster, it was those barriers. I just had hit the tires and ended up on my lid. These barriers were right there for the taking, and I think now what the capability was of what could happen.
With the true risk. Yeah.
I never thought that, we've always just glanced off of anything. You know what I mean? And for the first time I climbed and ended up on my lid. You know what I mean? So it was eye-opening, and then I think we had possibly, let me think about this, a daughter on the way.
Oh, wow.
And so, the wife got wind of it. It wasn't very popular.
I was going to ask, how was that when you came home?
Yeah, so the life insurance policy was going to be in full effect from there on out.
She was like, keep karting.
And one of the stipulations is I had to sell everything. When you get, I don't know if you've ever looked into life insurance, but if you tell them that because you got to fully disclose everything you do. And if you tell them that you race karts, your premium goes up 5 times than a guy that rides a motorcycle on the street on the freeway.
5 times of riding a motorcycle, which already is a higher risk, right?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So they basically said you can pay this, or you can prove
to
your
us stuff
that you sold there, and you won't get in something for 2 years. I think is the
Wow,
dude.
Yeah. So that's when, if you look at my timeline of things, it's kind of after 17.
Yeah.
When
that's so funny. I mean, because there's a number of reasons, and they all align with what you got going on. But as you get older, life happens, right? But freaking life insurance going up 5 times because you're driving a damn go-kart.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the fact that you had this incident happen, which in the grand scheme is not a oh my god incident, but for you coming from where you were, it was a bit of an eye opener, as you say. And then you put yourself in a, because it doesn't matter who you are. We had a conversation with Stu Hayner, and it was about the guy has done Long Beach in touring cars or sports cars, what have you, and yeah, rock and roll. But he goes to Long Beach, and the confidence wasn't there, so he didn't do well right out of the gate. So it's not out of the norm for people to do a street course and not be comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, you went there for your first street course ever as a new outdoor karter, if you will. And, yeah, you weren't into it. And you ended up not running
and I don't think it helped also. I mean, we go out for first practice session, and there is...
I think it was an incident right away.
There was 3... guys on their lid.
It was not.
We talked about this with Race Labronte because he was there at weekend 2, and just the amount of shit surrounding
I'm watching
the
these guys
class.
just go down left and right, chassis in complete folds, 90 degrees. It was like that was probably not the event I should have came back for, but
yeah,
But you were invited, seriously,
and I was looking good.
Yeah.
Well, no, and that was just it. Was that when things kind of got put together, it wasn't terrible. It was actually rolling pretty good. Logan had a pretty good weekend as well. I was the sharp end for a bit. At the end of the day, we had a pretty dynamic group of drivers in that deal.
Yeah.
But we walk away from Lancaster, and turns out you end up not running 206 or anything like that afterwards, and beyond that, you'd already actually kind of hit pause on the racing stuff. Championship in 2016 with the Super Series, go 206 racing, have a couple things happen, and end up, as it turns out, selling everything to get a better premium on the life insurance, just because hey, bills and life, etc.
The bitter irony is, it cost you to keep racing.
Yeah.
You went to
I found some other
that.
joys, that I enjoyed doing, and it just wasn't worth the risk or the headache.
Yeah.
At home, knowing what it does to the wife when I leave,
Sure.
So especially once you have a little girl, it's a little different.
And now you got 2 little munchkins.
Yeah, I got 2. Yep, 2 little girls, and it's so funny. You go back to the SPV days. Right now, as it stands, we all have girls. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Patrick's made reference, hey, we should make like a little girl team here, and have
That's
SPV
funny.
too,
That's cool.
But yeah, no, everything's kind of come full circle, and going back, there was a lot of good times here, and the sports carts, and then going in outdoors. Like I said earlier, it still saddens me. I still think I would try to figure it out and how to get out here if the Grands were still going, just because I love that event so much.
Right. No, that event is a good time, and having a carrot and a reason to come back out and rock and roll. And I've actually been having that motivation conversation with a few of the people that I coach right now. You need to know why. For some people, they need to figure it out. They need to know why they like to race. Some people, it's just like, I just love doing it.
Yeah.
And everybody has to have that motivation. Now that we've talked about, you basically sold things off, didn't go racing it, you didn't come back to karting until we just talked earlier about the All-Star race. That was actually your first race back, am I correct? Or did you do like a Classico or something like that?
Sensor Championship, I think that was it.
I want to say it was the All-Star race in 2019.
Ago, right? Yeah.
That's impressive.
So you don't come back until that. You've done that one, and you've done that weekend, right? You've done the Classico GP weekend here.
Yeah, I think I did maybe one race since 16, 17, a year.
Yeah. So you've made that you're not racing. You're just. Do you still have a little bit of that drive, that desire? What would light the fire under Miles Calvin to get back in the seat and go racing again?
So if you go back, even there was always different motivation factors for me. I love put my eyesight on something to go get, and I think through the years that when we were racing here, hey, let's put some kind of prize package together or whatever.
Right. Carrot.
Yeah. But for me, all those years, it was the Grands. I mean, there was probably a few times that I thought, do I really want to do Super Series this year? No, but I do want to do the Grands. And if I'm going to do the Grands, I better be in tip-top shape. So I might as well do Super Series and be ready for it when it comes. It was always, and then, okay, I've already done half. I might as well finish it off,
Yeah.
But, so now what I would say to bring me back, it wouldn't be anything outdoors. It would. I do miss the racing. Don't get me wrong, man. I mean, the sport kart stuff, I honestly think the bang for the buck, it's the best around, and I really wish that some of the outdoor guys would try to come adjust and come race us, because I think they would see what they've been missing for a long time. Now, I know a few of them have tried in previous years, but it just didn't work out because the technique is a little bit different. So it's not much different than 206.
You got to come in with an open mind, and the few guys that we've had step down, either. Yeah, well, it was all not the right mindset. Let's just
say if you go back before, like I said, Casey, they weren't going to come race us, because why would they put their name at risk to possibly lose to these chumps?
In a rental cart,
yeah. Yeah, no, it was. Right. But I think now that they see some talent that came out, and there's actually some guys that can drive, I would love to put, or see an event that brought everybody back again.
Well, shit, dude, I like to think that Mike and I are kind of, as we've started to move up and do more two-stroke shit, and and they see us all the time coaching rental carts, then we go race Tri-C. It's like there's a lot to gain from these things. And, he talks to some of the guys in Masters. I talk to some of the guys in Senior. I'm like, if you want to get better at racing, come out and do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll be honest with you, I actually don't agree. I don't think that that they were worried about risking their name or like that. I really don't think that was it at all. But I do think that they didn't think it was legit, And I think that's at the end of the day, when you're going to go racing, you want to be tested. You want it to be a challenge. At the end of the day, you want it to be fun. I think the arrive and driver, the competition guys that came out to do arrive and drive, it was to just have fun. That was it. They maybe in the back of their mind thought that, we're probably going to whack some people or whatever, but the bumper cars or this or that or whatever. And then they're surprised when they get here and see that it is different. But I don't think they're risking anything by coming out whatsoever. I think it was more of just,
for me, I still try to find what motivates a lot of the guys in outdoor rinks. I mean, what always has triggered me is financially, sport karting is way more promising.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, for a $125 or $200 entry, if it was the Grands, or $300, whatever it may have been, I got a chance to win at one time $2,000.
Sure.
My return on investment on that is like 6 times.
It's pretty good.
You know what I mean? You come out here for an outdoor event, you're lucky to pay for your tires for the weekend.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, you're not getting any return.
Right. And so what motivates those guys? I don't know. That's why I still in the back of my head wish that you could put something together, because I think financially it is attractive. For these guys to come compete and put their best foot forward.
So basically, I need money on the top step for you to come back.
I mean, a prestigious event.
At least
a prestigious event.
$140.
And that's why we see it coming out for Classical GP, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, there's the All-Star or whatever, but it's also like there's something more about this particular event. At the end of the day, when you're coming out here and you're deciding to go racing, your motivation is to do well. It's still going to be hard for you to just jump off the couch and just play. Mm-hmm. You still want to win every time.
No matter what I do. Yeah. I mean, luckily lately I've been playing a lot more golf and been able to do some competitions there. But yeah, I mean, if there was the right event, and I come back for the Classical GP and that All-Star event was kind of cool. But it would be nice to see a lot of the old faces and test our skills out again, and against
bullshit. And that's what I mean. Even Casey and Logan say, like, I'd come back and do it if all my friends were there. Yeah. But they're all off having kids and shit.
It's a different time. Yeah, different era for sure. But you guys, I mean, from what I still follow it really, really pretty closely. I wouldn't say that I'm coming out here watching events or anything, but I'm watching
for a guy
results.
That's not racing. Yeah, you're paying attention to it.
Yeah, and so you guys are definitely turning out quite the crop. That sprint series is taking off, but I would definitely like to see the Super Series. I haven't seen any videos lately of the Super Series, but I'd love to see some good old racing back like it was, in 14, 15. I think it was just a little different back then.
Well, and it's funny, and this is actually something I'm waiting to bring up. The group that I grew up around racing around, which is watching you guys and Casey and Darren and all those guys, and I think Mike can agree with this. The speed has gotten faster in terms of the drivers have just gotten faster over the last few years. The racing has been different, and I think it's because each race these guys are learning the racecraft, where you guys already knew the racecraft. You're learning tips and tricks. or you're learning the little nuances, you know?
Yeah.
So when you being a guy that's been around literally since the inception of Super Series, and you come back out to that once a year time for Classico GP, what is the difference that you feel like in the event or in the on track stuff?
Well, I still get the enjoyment out of knowing that I put myself back 10 years, and I remember being at Dromo, and before my time, there was even a era of really fast drivers that were around before I was there. I can't think of his name right now. Casey
Rising.
Yeah. So if he ever came back on track, man, you better bet I was going to get out there and race this guy and show him who's, you know what I mean? So knowing coming back every year for the All-Star race, it's game on. Like, you guys think you're hot. Shit. No. Like, I'm going to show you the old dog still has a trick, you know? So
because it's a nice mixture. Because okay, for sure, you've got the new blood coming in, right?
And I just classify myself as old dog. What's Diego? Huh?
The oldest of old dogs,
man.
The wisest of old dogs.
Get ready to be put down, dog. I'm just kidding. Too much.
He's past his prime, right? What is he in points? Like fifth or something last time I looked?
That's awesome.
Unbelievable. Barely wins a Masters championship. But you get a chance to run against friends and stuff like that, the All-Star deal. But like you said, you get the new kids coming on up. You get a chance to be I'd be curious out of the ones that run currently, if they go, oh shit, Miles Calvin. That's what I was.
See, I still like Sam Hunt. Let's go.
Come on.
Let's go. Let's bring it on. You know, I mean, I've seen his name on that Facebook quite a bit. You know what I mean? So I still follow it, and I'm sure they still know the old stats. You know, and then you still get, you know, I still think there's a lifelong of you still get Taylor and of still wanting to step on that top step top of us. You know what I mean? So. John, I don't know. I mean, I think he just comes and has a good time. You know what I mean? But when he does make an appearance. But no, I mean, for me, if I'm going to sign up for something, you better bet I'm going to
try to win it.
You know, and so for me, I understand on your guys' and you guys want to make it as fun as possible. But for me, and maybe I'm a one-offer, but I want to keep it as legit as possible. You know what I mean? And like just a random start. Hey, I'm not coming out here to get second. You know what I mean? So that would be things I would want to make sure that are, and that's what the Classico GP offers on Sunday. You know, but that Saturday race, I mean, that trophy's sitting right on my wall at home. You know what I mean? Both of them. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
And I tell you what, I'd absolutely love to steal that #1 plate from you. That'd be awesome. Even though I'd have to give it. I probably had to lift it the line or something.
Just give me that one lap of quali or something to give me my starting position. I've been lucky enough to be able to compete in those last 2 years, but just I want to keep that All-Star race streak going. So make sure we keep it as legit as possible.
No, because then I'll get pole.
Oh gosh,
come on, baby.
How many LBs are you over there right now?
Oh man, I may look it, but it doesn't say on the scale, bro.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to race in senior anymore.
He goes on a course naked to make weight, but he's out there.
One of those clear suits. Give me a rain
suit. Oh god.
It's been fun. I mean, we've had a lot of battles through the years. I mean, I was even, going to ask you, like, back when you were coming to Dromo days, like, what went through your mind? Because I know that, we were watching every move of yours, but I think through the years we were able to see a little bit of insight because I think you ran with, like, John and maybe Diego and some of the 24 stuff.
That was after,
but what exactly was going on. But, I mean, there were some good heated battles back in the day.
Yeah, no, when we in those days too. Like the very first time I ever went to a big event was the 2006 World Championships in F1 Race Factory, and it was just me and a couple buddies that had started our own team, and then in 7 we went back, same team, and did better. And actually in 7 I finished. That was when I finished 5th. Overall, and you had mentioned it earlier, highest American, and actually myself, yourself, Logan, Jordan Pemberton, I think that's all of them, all have the same distinction at the, it used to be called the Indoor Karting World Championship, now they just call it the World Karting Championship, but it's a arrive and drive. We all have the same distinction of getting the highest finish of American 5th. I did mine in 7, and then went to Europe and Kortrijk and got 6th, although it was split up into heavy and light. Point being is,
so can we say maybe 12th?
It was 17th probably,
yeah,
maybe 117th.
Thank you for keeping them honest.
Yeah, it wasn't good. But the reality is that back then we were doing these events and we were taking it as seriously as anybody else, etc. And we'd go to this thing, and no, we also showed up to try to win. Our ability to learn new tracks and do well, and especially it was an endurance event too, the 12 hours. We knew it wasn't just a one-off, or it could be a one-man show. It was your team. So you'd go, and I remember going to Dromo for the very first time and being pretty confident going in our own ability. I had done the 6 and 7 World Championships in Phoenix, and then, all right, we're going to go to this California joint. And we were excited about it because there was a lot of talent coming out of SoCal, specifically Dromo. We met them at the World Championships. And I go there for the first time, and I'm like, what in the hell am I driving right now? The Stratus kart was completely different than anything I had driven indoor. The surface was completely different than anything I had driven indoor. And I'm like, guys, we might have a problem in the endurance game right now. Like, this is challenging. And that was Friday practice. And then we got...
Now, mind you, you would never see it. Like, that was the one thing that he had a poker face of poker faces. Like, you would never know that they were struggling.
Right.
You would probably think that they had 30 pounds on their cart. Like, they were doing off, random stuff. You know what I mean? So we're always over here trying to guess, and I mean, the first 2 days of any event they would do time trials between their team.
Oh, wow.
There was no set team. Like, you better come up and show up, and if you're going to be on the A squad.
Yeah.
And so, we were, I'm like, these guys are cutthroat, man. I mean, we're coming in here with our buddies, okay, let's give it our best shot. And he's like, hey, you're on
Miles I brought my brother along because I got to babysit him.
You're on the B team, sorry.
Them,
Yeah. So, no, there was definitely, we were watching you left and right back in those Dromo, and especially once we got into, Phoenix. Okay, what are these guys doing? Diego was notorious for going out, for 2 days running 30 pounds heavy. Diego would be at the bottom of the charts, and he's like, "Don't worry, guys, don't worry. I'm going to get this." And then day of, he would just pull off his weight, and then he would show up.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Each session, he's taking 5 pounds out.
It's actually funny about that too. Is that I literally have a Diego Morales story about that, and I remember I want to say it was the 2009. I think it was the 2009 USIKC. And, yeah, he's running heavy or whatever. And Adam Kellerman, who was on my team, was notorious for the other end of the spectrum and always running light. And I'm like, Adam, stop doing that because it's not what you're going to race at. Nobody cares. If you're going to be competitive, you're going to be competitive. And, Adam, you're going to be competitive. So just do your own thing. But I would yell at him. And then I would also go, hey, guys, see this Morales guy? Yeah, the guy likes to run heavy, so he's definitely going to be in the game.
Awesome.
We know what the hell's going on. They're just trying to play shenanigans. Forget about it.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of that going on.
But
you're
100% right. I'd like to think that maybe the SRD, the way we did stuff, had any kind of influence on SPV.
Oh yeah,
because we were there to win. Period. Yeah, it's for fun, but we ain't here to have fun. We're here to win, and that was it. We would get done. We won. In both 08 and 09. We came back and we had a little team meeting. I'm like, guys, congratulations. We won the championship. This is 2008. What can we do better? What were we not good at? And I did not win the individual in 9, but we won the team championship again because we as a group, as a unit, were that much better. And we tried to attack.
I tend to be that way as well, but you don't find a lot of folk that are like that. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, a lot of them are there to have fun. You know what I mean? And sometimes being like that is just not fun. You know what I mean? So
but I have fun by default.
Yeah,
that's just it. I think you can want to go destroy the competition. If you enjoy what it is that you're doing, you're still having a good time, no matter what.
No, and the Worlds and the US's, I mean, there was probably more times off track that were more enjoyable and fun and memorable than on track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My Belgium trip was one of the best trips I've ever taken in my entire life. You know what I mean?
I could echo that. Yeah.
The people you meet and those things, it's unbelievable. And then to see that you think you're pretty good, just wait.
Yeah,
you go over there and you just get, and you're like, dude, how's these guys not going to, F2, how are these guys not on the path?
Yeah.
What was his name from Blue Star?
Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny Geldof.
The guy ran circles around us.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I remember being there and when he won his first one. Excuse me. Did not win his first one. His very first KWC, because Gregory won. Gregory Laporte, who's the team
manager,
team owner, if you will, of Blue Star. He won that year, but Kenny's, that was his first year, and he was like right at the sharp end. And then he won the next.
I think he won Belgium
10,
when we were in Belgium.
I think he got 10 and 11. Yeah.
And just like, how's this guy, and just never, So it was enlightening to see. You're like, okay, you might be good, but you're not that good.
Yeah.
And the amount of preparation stuff that you go into it, it's phenomenal. Well, Miles, I got to tell you, we could go a long, long time just trading stories about back in the day, indoor status, all the different stuff you've done out here as one of the absolute best in sport karting and Super Series and all this other kind of stuff. Machismo wins. I mean, we could go a long, long time. But I really appreciate you coming out here.
Yeah,
Derek
thanks for
this
having
is
me.
a great time, man.
We've been wanting to talk to you, and this did not disappoint. It was a lot of fun.
Well, no, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.